Chapter 83. According to Ta and the others, plants like the fire spear would not come back for a short period of time after their first failure. In addition, their blood would prevent other creatures from approaching. Therefore, the tree hole was safe for the time being, even safer than it had been in the past few days. Ta guessed that the two fire spears were here for the green thief. Without wasting any time, he took a few people with him to the swamp to get some mud. They covered the stone box with a layer of mud, and then wrapped it with a big leaf with a fragrant smell. They tied it with a straw rope, which could cover most of the smell of the green thief. This was also the method they used to cover up when they found plants with strong smells. The smell of the green thief was hard for humans to smell, but some plants and animals could sense it through other means. It was good to take some protective measures. Now, the people no longer underestimated Xiao Xian. Even though they still thought that setting traps was a small trick, they could not deny the benefits this method brought to them. As a result, the people's attitude towards Xiao Xian became much better. Maybe Xiao Xian was really protected by the ancestors, and that was why they could find the green thief. At the same time, Xiao Xian's ability could not be ignored. At least in the eyes of the people, so far, Xiao Xian was much more successful than most of the newcomers in the tribe. After resting for a while, Ta led a group of people to continue searching around, to see if they could find more seedlings of the green thief. And Xiao Xian followed Tua and Kiki to climb up the tree. The tree hole was in the middle of the trunk of the giant tree. Further up, the dense branches and leaves of the canopy were occupied by all kinds of birds. Although they were not big birds, and the largest one had a wingspan of about 1 meter, they had the advantage in numbers. Therefore, the people in the advance group usually did not go up there to provoke them. However, because of the chaotic battle of the fire spears, many birds were scared away. Most of the birds that stayed in their nests during the day were scared away. Therefore, after returning to the tree hole, Xiao Xian followed Tua and Kiki to climb up the canopy to search for birds' nests, and picked up a lot of bird eggs. When they ate bird eggs in this place, Tua and the others ate them raw. They didn't refuse any kind of bird eggs. Xiao Xian took out 3 eggs from a bird's nest. Strangely, the 3 eggs looked different even though they were in the same nest. In terms of size, the big one was a little bigger than an adult's fist, while the small one was about the size of an egg Xiao Xian had seen in his previous life. In terms of color, there were 3 eggs. One was purplish red, one had blue and white spots, and the last one was earthy yellow with some circular patterns on it. Are all of these edible? Xiao Xian asked. Kiki looked back and said, "Yes, I have eaten all of them." Why do the eggs in the same nest look so different? Xiao Xian asked as he carefully put the eggs into the animal skin bag filled with leaves. Maybe those birds stole it from somewhere else, Kiki said carelessly. Stolen? Xiao Xian was surprised. Of course, with their size, how could they lay such eggs? There are only so many birds in your nest, Kiki gestured with his hands. How could such a small bird lay so many fist-sized eggs at once? But those birds have long and thin claws, so it must be very convenient for them to steal eggs. All the eggs here were stolen. Xiao Xian was surprised. All of them, Kiki said with certainty. Birds of a feather really flock together. These were all egg-stealing birds. No matter what species they were, they all gathered together. They weren't afraid that the eggs in their nests would be stolen by other birds. After all, the eggs were not their own, so they didn't feel bad even if they were stolen. Thinking about it, these birds must have their own places of laying eggs, which were more hidden, or bred in other special ways. While digging out the eggs, Xiao Xian found many eggs in the nests that were pecked open. There was some leftover egg white in the eggs, and in some eggs, the larvae had already taken shape, but they were pecked until they were incomplete. These birds in the canopy stole the eggs to store as food. After filling the bag with eggs, they returned to the tree hole. Ta and the others searched for a long time, but they didn't find any more seedlings of the green thief. They might have been robbed by other creatures. Judging from the behavior of the fire spear, the green thief was indeed very popular. Fortunately, Xiao Xian's trap caught the green thief at night, and they got up early in the morning, so the green thief was not robbed. At the same time, it could be speculated that the creatures that were interested in the green thief were those that were active during the day, while the plants and animals that were active at night were not that interested in the green thief. In any case, they were lucky enough to catch the green thief and find a few seedlings of the green thief. "Boss, will the seedlings die soon after they are pulled out?" Asua looked at the green seedlings in Ta's hand and asked. Hearing Asua's words, the others also thought of the same thing. They had encountered similar situations before. After the seedlings were pulled out, no matter how careful they were or how they were covered with soil, they would die soon. The adult seedlings could not last as long as the seedlings. "It's possible. How about we eat the seedlings? It'll be a waste if we don't eat them." "Yes, yes, yes. What if we wake up tomorrow and find these seedlings dead? After all, the seedlings are not big green thieves, so they can't last long." They gathered together and discussed. If it were other plants in the past, they wouldn't be so nervous. But this was the green thief they were talking about. They hadn't encountered one for many years. The death of any seedling would be a great loss. In the end, Ta decided to eat all 6 seedlings of the green thief first. He also wanted to wait until the other team of 20 people met up, but he already felt the vitality of the seedlings in his hand was quickly draining. Ta pulled out half a leaf and ate it first. He was the strongest one here, and also the leader of the team. He planned to try it himself first. If there were no problems, he would let the others eat it. The others stared at Ta, watching him eat the small half-leaf. They didn't even want to blink, for fear of missing any details. "How is it? Boss, how do you feel?" Asua asked quickly. Ta sensed it carefully and shook his head. "I don't feel anything except that my strength has recovered a little." The others were disappointed, but even so, they still ate the seedlings. Xiao Xian got a leaf, which was more than the others, but no one complained. In terms of merit, Xiao Xian got more than all of them combined. Xiao Xian could have kept the green thief for himself if it wasn't for the rule passed down by the hunting group in the tribe, which stated that the things they hunted must be shared with everyone. Just like the last time when Xiao Xian hunted the thorn black wind, he could have kept the green thief for himself. Therefore, the others knew in their hearts that they had gained a big advantage. They also planned to help Xiao Xian hunt more food on their way back. After the sun went down, not many birds flew back to their nests. The cha-cha birds on the trees were less than half, and the surroundings were much quieter. Those birds had other nests. When a disaster struck one place, they would hide in another, and come back when the disaster subsided. Before the night fell, Kiki asked Xiao Xian to set up a trap in the surrounding area to see if they could get something else tonight. The rope that connected the white hares was gone, so they could only use thinner vines and straw ropes to replace it. However, Xiao Xian had a feeling that they wouldn't get anything tonight. When the night fell, the others didn't go to sleep, but crowded at the entrance of the cave. "Why do I feel that it did work?" Tua said, looking at a small protrusion about 10 meters away from the entrance of the cave. "I feel it too. Although I can't see clearly, I can see a little farther than before." "You're right. This is just a seedling. If it eats a big one, will it be able to move freely in the dark?" Even Ta couldn't move freely in the dark. His vision wasn't as good as those ferocious beasts, so his movements would be limited. The effect of the green thief seedling made everyone happy, but they wouldn't eat it alone. They would bring the green thief in the stone box back to the tribe and hand it over to the shaman. This made Xiao Xian admire the shaman even more. Even in the face of such great temptation, these people could still stick to their principles. This was the result of the shaman's training. It was a very quiet night. Everyone was having sweet dreams, and the night watchers were paying attention to the movements under the tree, hoping to catch more green thieves. Xiao Xian slept well that night, but he did not have any dreams. He did not dream of the flowing green. The next day, before the sun completely rose, everyone rushed down the tree to see Xiao Xian's trap. Other people who knew a little about setting traps also set some traps. However, they were disappointed today. Nothing was put on. The ground, which was covered with red liquid yesterday, was now covered with green. The knee-high grass grew up overnight. The blood of the fire spear became their nutrients. Chapter 84. Bitter sand root, living blood leaf, seven-forked palm, blood thread flower. Ta and Tuo were counting the results of the hunting over the past few days, while Xiao Xian was counting the days. The hunting time was up, and it was time for them to go back. In the past few days after they got the green thief, the hunting group would set a few traps every night, but the results were minimal, and they didn't find anything useful. They were just lucky that night. In the past few days, Xiao Xian had been following them everywhere. Although he couldn't help much with his fighting ability, he didn't need to worry about the others. Xiao Xian could take care of himself, which was the biggest help for the others. Xiao Xian had learned a lot of wonderful things in the past few days. Once, in order to find the seven-forked palm, he almost fought against the rippers. When the seven-forked palm sensed danger, it would close its thick bark-like leaves, wrapping the core of its body into a solid object like a pine tower, and at the same time, secreting a kind of liquid that could attract the rippers. If the hunting group hadn't acted fast enough, they would have been surrounded by a large group of rippers, who had followed the smell. On the other side, Tuo had finished counting. Compared to the last hunting, we have 2 less. But this time, we found the wind ball and the green thief, so our achievements are much better than before. Tuo said with a smile. Ta also showed a relaxed look, because this time they did get more than before. We'll count again when we meet up with Wei and the others. Maybe they have found the other 2. Wei was a senior totem warrior, about the same age as Ta. He led the other 20 warriors to separate from Ta and the others. Ta said to the others, "Let's take a rest today, and get ready to go back tomorrow." "Yes, boss." The others answered. They couldn't wait to go back, and they were looking forward to sharing their experience with their peers or seniors in the other advance group. Xiao Xian was also looking forward to going back, but not for the green thief, but for the bird eggs in his animal skin bag. The other members of the advance group were not interested in the bird eggs either. Kiki had used the remaining bird eggs as bait when they encountered the Ripper. The Ripper also ate bird eggs. Xiao Xian threw them away too. However, there were still some eggs left in the tree hole and he didn't bring them with him. Now, they were no longer in the tree hole, but in another place. In order to find their target, their resting place had been constantly changing. One night, they even slept in the leaves, using the leaves to roll themselves into a cylinder, and slept for the whole night. That night, around the plant that looked like a ham, the layers of leaves wrapped around it should have been upright, but there were 21 leaves that were rolled up into cylinders and hung there. There was a person sleeping in each cylinder. Tuo said that the plant had the function of repelling insects. It was also one of the objects they wanted to collect. When they had no place to sleep, they would use the big leaves of the plant to wrap themselves up so that they would not be attacked by the insects that came out at night. However, he couldn't do it during the day. During the day, the leaves of the plant became very hard and couldn't be rolled up at all. For Xiao Xian, this was a very novel experience. As for the bird eggs in the animal skin bag, he wanted to take them out to try. Most of the plants would wither away after leaving this place, but what about the bird eggs? The plants here were very unusual, and so were the insects that ate the plants here. Furthermore, could it be speculated that the birds that ate the fruits and insects here had more nutritional value or medicinal effect than the birds from other places? So did the bird eggs. The shelf life of a raw egg was longer than that of a boiled egg. Xiao Xian didn't know if this was the case for these strange-looking bird eggs, so he didn't cook them. The next day, Ta led the group back, and met up with the other 20 people at the agreed place. Some of them were injured, but fortunately, they weren't seriously injured. After hearing about the green thief, the other 20 people stared at the stone box wrapped in leaves. They couldn't wait to open it and take a look, but they also knew that it was not the right time. When they came here, they used the big dragonflies to glide down from the mountain, and when they returned, they also needed to borrow the dragonflies. When the sun was about to set, the people in the advance group waited in one place. Some of them climbed up the tall plants to check the location of the army of dragonflies. After all, they didn't always take the same route on their return journey. Over there. Let's go. Hurry up. If we're too slow, we won't be able to catch up. We have to wait until tomorrow. Xiao Xian didn't need to carry the boxes with the plants. He only carried the animal skin bag, which was much lighter than the others. At this time, in order to catch up with the army of dragonflies, everyone was running in that direction in a hurry. Xiao Xian suddenly felt like he was rushing to catch a bus in his previous life. Tut! He quickly climbed up the tall plants, and tied a rope in his hand. When the army of dragonflies flew by, he threw the rope out and tied it around their feet. After he was pulled up, if there were still dragonflies flying in the air, he would jump onto the backs of the dragonflies below. The rope was too long, and if he hung in the air, he would be easily swept by the wings of the dragonflies. When they were about to reach the mountain, the dragonflies began to flap their wings and fly higher. The ground was getting farther and farther away, and the objects below were getting smaller and smaller. Behind them, on the green land, the tall plants closed their leaves, and the blooming flowers closed their petals. All kinds of sounds announced that the evening was coming. Be careful when you jump. Don't get hit. Ta shouted to Xiao Xian. Got it. The moment the dragonflies flew up the cliff, Xiao Xian quickly ran towards the tail of the dragonflies. He found a gap and jumped down. He inserted his stone knife into the mountain wall, and slowly slid down the mountain wall until he stood firmly on a flat ground. Move! Move! Bang! The dragonfly that Kiki was sitting on flew a little too high. When he jumped over, he hit the mountain wall and rolled a few times before he landed. Although he hit the wall, Kiki still protected the box with the herbs in his arms. When he stood up, he rubbed his back and grimaced in pain. After everyone jumped down, the army of dragonflies also climbed over the mountain, and went to the pond where they rested. Let's go. Have a good rest. We'll be busy in the next few days. Ta said. However, they were too excited to talk about the green thief that night, so they didn't sleep for long. After leaving the mountain the next day, Xiao Xian realized what Tua and the others meant when they said, "There are many things here that we can't take away." The green land could no longer be seen, and the fragrant big leaves that wrapped the green thief's stone box were withering, turning yellow, and falling to the ground. The mud wrapped around the stone box couldn't completely cover the smell of the green thief. What made everyone depressed was that many ferocious beasts seemed to be very interested in the green thief. Originally, everyone in the advance group wanted to give Xiao Xian some advice and help him hunt some food on the way back. However, they were so busy that they couldn't even talk to each other. In order to protect the green thief, everyone in the advance group fought all the way. In order to get back as soon as possible, they didn't bring any prey. The longer they stayed, the more difficult it would be for them. At first, they killed all the ferocious beasts that came to them one by one, two by two, and one by one. Robbing the green thief? No way. Die, die, die. But gradually, everyone's strategy changed. What? More ferocious beasts coming for the green thief? How many? Run! Run! Everyone in the advance group had never been so embarrassed. In the past, they could bring back some prey or some souvenirs from the ferocious beasts on their way back. But this time, they didn't have the time, and they didn't have the mood. Everyone had a strong smell of blood on them, and it was the blood of high-level ferocious beasts. They didn't have time to wipe the blood off their faces. Their hair was messy, and they looked even worse than the kids in the cave. Blood clots had already formed on their animal skins, and when they dried them, they could easily rub them off. Even at night, they were attacked from time to time. It was unbearable. They didn't get enough sleep, and they were tired all the way back. They had to fight and kill along the way. Luckily, the average strength of the advance group was strong. If it were any other hunting group, they would have lost some members here. Therefore, Xiao Xian, who could still be energetic after a nap, became an outlier among them. The others looked at Xiao Xian with a gloomy look. Xiao Xian looked at the animal skin bag. The bird eggs were still in good condition. He had put some dry leaves and hay in the bag. Since he left, only one of the eggs had been broken. According to the rules of the hunting group, except for the target, everything they got belonged to them. Therefore, no one would say anything about the bird eggs that Xiao Xian had. They weren't interested in the eggs anyway. When they were looking for the target, they had eaten a lot of bird eggs and all kinds of fruits. They hadn't eaten roasted meat for many days, so naturally, they wouldn't eat bird eggs anymore. But when they bit into the meat, they chewed it like it was their enemy. They chewed loudly, probably cursing those ferocious beasts in their dreams. Chapter 85. When the hunting groups arrived at the meeting time, the advance group would usually arrive first. They needed to pack the herbs they brought back in new wooden boxes. Because of the green thief, the advance group was in a hurry, so they arrived one day earlier. When the 40 or so warriors of the advance group finally arrived at the meeting point, exhausted, they did not have much time to rest. After cutting wood, they built a big wooden box as big as a carriage, and put all the herbs they brought back inside. Then the wooden box was sealed, tied with vines, and covered with leaves of other plants. In short, no one could see what was inside, and no insects or other things could get in. After packing the herbs, the advance group was divided into two groups. One group stayed to look after the herbs, and the other went hunting. They took turns. After all, they had to bring back some game, or else what would they eat when they returned to the tribe empty-handed? Besides, they had to bring more things with them on the path of glory, so as not to lose face. There were not too many high-level ferocious beasts around the meeting point, so the advance group was not worried that the place where they stored the herbs would be dangerous. Besides, it was close to the top of the mountain, so there were fewer animals. Xiao Xian went hunting with the first group. Ta saw that he was in good spirits, so he nodded and agreed. The ferocious beasts around were not too strong. If anything happened, the warriors in the advance group could protect Xiao Xian. One day later, the other hunting groups also arrived at the meeting point one after another. Mai's group was the second of the 5 to arrive. Seeing that they had a good hunting result this time, the warriors looked relaxed. Xian, the advance group is good, isn't it? You look quite energetic. Lang Jie patted Xiao Xian's shoulder with a smile. However, when he looked at the other warriors in the advance group, he could not say anything more. Not only Lang Jie, but the other hunting groups also guessed that the advance group might have encountered some great disaster when they arrived at the meeting point and saw the condition of the warriors in the advance group. After several days of continuous traveling and fighting, they were busy packing the animals when they arrived at the gathering point. Then, they had to go down the mountain to hunt again. In order to maintain the reputation and status of the advance group, the hunting animals they chose were not low-level animals. They were busy all the way until the evening. The 40 of them split into two groups and took turns going down the mountain to hunt. They only rested for one night. However, one night was not enough for them to recover from their exhaustion and lack of energy. Their mental state was still not good. Even after a simple grooming, it could not change their sorry state. When had the advance group ever been in such a sorry state? Everyone had their own guesses. At the very least, they had never seen the advance group in such a state since they started hunting with the team. It was as if they had been brutally ravaged and tortured to such a state. As for the reason, everyone couldn't help but compare the difference between this time and the previous hunting teams. The only difference was the addition of Xiao Xian. The kids, who were still immersed in the joy of their first hunting experience and exchanging experiences with their awakened companions, were now whispering to each other and pointing at Xiao Xian. The advance group is so tired to protect Xian, but Xian is totally fine. That's right. He's a burden, isn't he? Even if he was lucky enough to be protected by the ancestors last time, he might not be so lucky every time. Anyway, it's good enough that he came back safely. Anyway, it looks like the advance group won't take him with them next time. Alas, it's better for him to stay in the hunting group like us. How old is he? He's not strong at all. He's just a junior totem warrior like us. How dare he dream of staying with the advance group? Not only these kids, but the others in the hunting group also had the same idea. Everyone in the advance group was so tired that they couldn't hide the exhaustion on their faces. It was just like how they were even more tired to protect the new warriors in this hunting mission. It must be because of Xiao Xian. The place the advance group went to was naturally more dangerous, and any small factor could lead to different results. Xiao Xian was the unstable factor in this advance group. I told you that Xian shouldn't be with them. Someone said in a low voice. It must be because of protecting that kid that the advance group is so tired. Otherwise, why didn't we see them like this before? It seems that the advance group has suffered a great loss this time. Alas, being tortured like this. Even the prey has been reduced a lot. I don't think my son is any worse than Xian. Who knows when my son will be recruited? Maybe someone in the advance group likes Xian. Seeing that Xian's prey was good last time, he wants to marry his daughter to him. That's why he specially recruited Xian this time. Nonsense, the team leader doesn't have a daughter. But the others do. Hey, do you think the advance group is thinking about how to beat Xian up? Ha, that's possible. Someone said something, and that person and his teammates laughed together. But suddenly, their faces froze. Because they found that the 40 people in the advance group were all looking at them, as if they were looking at idiots. If it weren't for the fact that everyone in the advance party was too tired to move, they would have already gone over to beat him up. Xian is nothing. Have you seen the trap that kid set up? Have you seen the kid catch the green thief? Have you seen the kid make 2 fire lances fall to the ground in blood with one move? You don't even know shit. They had laughed at Xiao Xian in the beginning, but they had been slapped in the face within 2 days of entering the Green Land. Loss? If catching the wind ball and the green thief was a loss, they would rather suffer every day. As for the troubles they had encountered along the way, it was needless to say. There was a price to pay for everything. Since they had found the green thief, they had to be mentally prepared to deal with more troubles. They had been aware of this since the first day they joined the advance group. Torture. If they could find more animal skin scrolls and curly tail herbs, eat the green thief, and encounter more magical treasures, they would be willing to suffer such torture again and again. Seeing the expression on the advance group's faces, the leader of the hunting group glared at the warrior who had been joking in his group, warning him to stop talking. Except for the advance group, no one knew that it was Ta who had asked for Xiao Xian, not Xiao Xian. So naturally, they had all kinds of guesses. But some of them were smart enough to figure out that there must be some other reasons. But no matter what happened to the advance group, it was not something they could talk about casually. How dare you laugh at others when you don't have the ability? Lang Jie sneered. He looked at the few warriors who had been joking, his eyes full of disdain. Who did you say didn't have the ability? Someone stood up. We can't do anything to the advance group, but we can't do anything to you. What's wrong with that? Lang Jie was not afraid at all. Other warriors in the same hunting group stood up together with Lang Ga. They had a good impression of Xiao Xian. Whether Xiao Xian was protected by his ancestors or for other reasons, they thought that Xiao Xian was a good warrior, and that was enough for them. Seeing that the two hunting groups were about to fight, the team leader shouted, "Shut up, all of you." Ta glanced at the two groups with a cold face, and said in a deep voice, "Whoever makes noise again, don't follow us next time." The two groups immediately became obedient. After all, the team leader still had the quota. When Lang Jie walked back to his group's resting place, he saw Xiao Xian standing at the advance group's area and making a gesture to him. Lang Jie, who had been annoyed a moment ago, was so happy that his teeth almost fell out. Xiao Xian's gesture meant that there would be something good for him when he returned. After the whole group gathered, Ta led them back to the tribe. In the tribe, Old Ku was sitting on a stone in the training ground, with his hand on his crutch. No one knew what he was thinking. Hearing the noise, Old Ku looked up and saw Caesar running back with a stone smeared with grass juice in his mouth. After Xiao Xian left, Old Ku did not stop training Caesar. He followed Xiao Xian's training method. He had to admit that Xiao Xian's method was very useful, and Caesar's training was also very effective. He could find things that he had thrown away. To reward Caesar, Old Ku threw him a piece of meat. When he was about to say something, he saw some people rushing back to the tribe at the foot of the mountain. He also heard that the hunting group was coming back. Counting the days, the hunting group would be back in a few days. Old Ku could not sit still. After Caesar finished eating the meat, he sat on Caesar's back and gently knocked on Caesar's head. "Go back, Xian is coming back." Caesar was reluctant at first, but as soon as he heard Xiao Xian's name, he ran away immediately. Old Ku asked him to slow down, but he did not listen. The wounded had been sent back to the tribe in advance. When Old Ku returned to the tribe, there were already many people standing on both sides of the path of glory, waiting with their necks stretched. Finally, a group of people appeared in the distance. The people standing at the foot of the mountain blew the whistle to pass the message to the people waiting on the mountain. When the hunting group set foot on the path of glory, the people who had been waiting on both sides of the road for a long time were excited. This time, some of the children of some families were participating in the hunt for the first time, so those who had not gone out to hunt were all waiting below. Seeing that Xiao Xian was safe and sound, Old Ku was relieved. However, when he glanced at the people in the advance group, his heart skipped a beat. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that the people in the advance group were not in good condition. Thinking of what Xiao Xian said before leaving, "Don't worry," Old Ku touched his old heart in his chest. He felt that his heartbeat would not slow down no matter how hard he tried. He always felt that every time he heard this kid say, "Don't worry," something big would happen. Transition chapter. Tonight's chapter will be updated. Go to bed early. Continue on the weekend. Chapter 86. Back in the tribe, after the sword cleansing ceremony, everyone in the hunting group went down the mountain. The Xiao Xian didn't have much game, so he went down the mountain with the game by himself. This time, the shaman didn't ask the Xiao Xian to stay for a chat, because all his attention was on the green thief brought back by the advance group. He didn't have time to pay attention to other things. But after the sword cleansing ceremony, the shaman told the Xiao Xian that he would find him again in a few days, and that he would send someone to pass on the message. The advance group didn't bring back as many ferocious beasts as before, and the quality of the ferocious beasts was also not as good as before. But this time, they made the biggest contribution. The green thief couldn't be told directly. Only a few people in the tribe knew about it, and those who knew about it were those who had a high position in the tribe, or those who had made great contributions. Most of the ordinary people didn't know about it. The only thing they knew was that the advance group had made great contributions this time. Most of the ordinary people in the tribe didn't care about what the advance group had done. They cared more about their own family members who had participated in the hunt. As for other people, it was just a topic they talked about. Even if many people were curious about the performance of the advance group, they would forget about it after they went back to the tribe, and busy themselves with the game. Xiao Xian dragged the game back home, put it down, and ran to Old Ku's place. He also brought back some fresh meat and some bird eggs. When they went down the mountain, Xiao Xian gave Lang Jie and the others some bird eggs. He had eaten a lot of bird eggs in the Green Land, so he brought them back for them to see if there was any difference between the bird eggs in the Green Land and those in other places, and if they could be used as medicine eggs. In Old Ku's house, Xiao Xian briefly told him about the harvest this time. Of course, he couldn't tell him about some things that needed to be kept secret. He only emphasized the white hair used to set traps. That kind of white hair is very suitable for setting traps after it is connected into a thread. It's a pity that it can't be kept for long. I originally wanted to bring some back for you to see, but I ran into some trouble midway and used up all the traps. The broken thread began to deteriorate after a few days. It lost its elasticity and broke with a pull. When we came back, it had already degraded. Although some of the words Xiao Xian used were unfamiliar to Old Ku, he could guess the meaning of these words and understand what Xiao Xian was talking about. What a pity, Old Ku said. The materials were hard to find, which was one of the main reasons why this skill was gradually lost. It would be great if we could find a way to bring them back in one piece, Xiao Xian said. Old Ku shook his head. I won't force you. Old Ku's greatest wish was to pass on his skills to the right person. Now that he had found Xiao Xian, he had no regrets. Moreover, Xiao Xian could follow the advance group and come back safely. It was both luck and strength. What are these eggs? Old Ku looked at the eggs that Xiao Xian threw into the pot and asked. I brought them back from the other side. The people in the advance group often eat them, so I brought some back. Hearing Xiao Xian's words, Old Ku didn't ask any more questions. Since Xiao Xian said that the advance group often ate them, they should be good stuff. Xiao Xian kept 3 bird eggs and gave the rest to Old Ku. After having dinner at Old Ku's place in the afternoon, Xiao Xian took Caesar back home. Before the sun set, Xiao Xian planned to process the animal meat that he brought back. He set up a stone pot in the house and lit the fire. Xiao Xian put the 3 remaining bird eggs into the pot. He planned to cut them up and take them back to the cave after cooking them. After throwing the eggs into the pot of water, Xiao Xian left it alone and processed the animal meat outside the house. Otherwise, the night swallow would come out and cause trouble when it got dark. Caesar was lying in front of the wooden house, holding a bone and playing with it. Suddenly, his ears twitched. He turned his head and looked at the stone pot in the house. After listening carefully, he got up and ran to the pot to look inside. There were 3 bird eggs in the pot. They were as big as Xiao Xian's fist. However, they weren't the biggest or the smallest among the eggs that Xiao Xian brought back. They didn't have so many patterns, but the color of the eggs was different. Xiao Xian took the chopped meat and put it into the stone pot to marinate. He turned his head and saw Caesar staring at the stone pot. What are you looking at? Xiao Xian walked over and glanced at the stone pot. At a glance, he saw that one of the eggs had a crack on it, and the egg was still shaking. Damn it! Xiao Xian directly put his hand into the stone pot and fished out the broken egg. He held it in his hand and looked at it. Just now, the eggshell was only cracked. Xiao Xian fished it out in time, so it didn't get wet. The crack on the egg was getting bigger and bigger, and cha-cha sounds came from inside. Obviously, the bird in the egg was about to come out. Looking back at the stone pot, Xiao Xian scooped out the other 2 eggs from the pot with his free hand. Fortunately, the stone pot had just been set up and the temperature of the water hadn't risen yet. Otherwise, the bird that was about to break out of its shell would have been cooked directly. This had never happened to any of the bird eggs that he brought back. Even after eating so many bird eggs, none of them had taken shape. When he fished out the bird eggs, Xiao Xian followed Keek's instructions and took those eggs that looked like they had just been stolen. Normally, there wouldn't be any formed birds in them. This was Keek's experience. It wasn't that Kiki was overflowing with sympathy. It was just that it was difficult to light a fire in the green space. If there were formed birds in the eggs, he didn't like to eat them raw, and it was inconvenient to cook them. That was all. The eggs that had just been stolen were generally clean, while the eggs that had been left for a long time would have stains or other marks on them. The birds that stole the eggs didn't pay much attention to hygiene. The nests weren't exquisitely made and were very simple. The bird feces from the nests above could even fall into the nests below. Therefore, when Xiao Xian was selecting eggs, he chose the cleanest ones and didn't shake them one by one. Besides, there was no need to pay too much attention to whether the bird in the egg had taken shape or not. As Kiki said, if you didn't want to eat it, you could just throw it away. Before this, Xiao Xian hadn't encountered any eggs with formed chicks. He didn't expect that there would be one now. Xiao Xian's hands, which had just skinned the animal, were still stained with blood. The crack on the egg in his palm was getting bigger and bigger, and the sound of cha-cha was getting clearer and clearer. Xiao Xian could clearly feel the movement of the egg through his palm. Looking at the egg, he thought that if this bird could survive, he would raise it as a chicken. He just didn't know if it could lay eggs like a chicken. It didn't matter if it couldn't lay eggs. He could raise it until the end of the year and kill it to eat. The broken eggshell was pushed out, and the chicks inside gradually revealed themselves. It didn't look like the chicks that Xiao Xian had seen before. This bird was wet and had no hair, and its eyes were closed. Chicks were divided into early and late adult birds. Early adult birds could open their eyes as soon as they came out of the shell. Like chicks, they were fluffy and could stand, walk, and eat independently. Late adult birds couldn't open their eyes after they came out of the shell. They didn't have much hair, and had to stay in the nest and be fed by their parents. The one in Xiao Xian's hand was obviously a late adult bird. Xiao Xian observed the little chick's beak in his hand. From the shape of its beak, he could tell that it ate meat. Probably because the smell of blood on Xiao Xian's hand had stimulated the chick, it opened its beak wide and even pecked at Xiao Xian's hand. It probably thought that it was food, but it couldn't swallow it. Xiao Xian looked around. He took out an old piece of animal skin and placed it on the stone table. He placed the little chick in his hand on top of it. Then he took out a piece of unmarinated animal meat, cut a small piece, and tore it into smaller pieces. He used 2 thin wooden sticks to pick up the meat and put it into the chick's open beak. The meat he cut was the weakest among all the prey that Xiao Xian had hunted, but it wasn't weak by much. Xiao Xian didn't know if the chick could withstand the energy in the meat. Unexpectedly, the little chick swallowed it directly. Then it opened its beak wide and continued to make cha-cha sounds. There didn't seem to be any problems. Xiao Xian continued to feed it a few more times before it closed its beak. After eating, it went to sleep. Looking at the quiet little chick nesting on the animal skin, Xiao Xian shook the 2 eggs that he had fished out to listen for sounds. Then he threw them into the stone pot to continue cooking. As for the little chick that had just hatched, Xiao Xian shook his head. It was almost cooked. Fortunately, it had hatched before it was cooked. Chapter 87. Xiao Xian didn't know what the bird would look like when it grew up, what its habits would be, and what its flying ability would be. Maybe it would be similar to a chicken, or maybe a bird of prey. If it was the former, it could only be used as food. If it was the latter, he could train it to be used as a falcon. Even if it couldn't hunt, it could be used as an early warning. Of course, it was too early to say. Xiao Xian didn't know the potential of this bird. If it didn't have any reason to exist, Xiao Xian didn't need to do anything. The others would kill it. After all, it wasn't Caesar. When Caesar was still young, he was marked by the shaman. Even if he didn't have the wolf nature, no one dared to have any ideas about him in the tribe. There was an ice cave in the tribe near the top of the mountain. Many people stored food that wasn't pickled there, but they had to hand over a part of it as a reward. Xiao Xian also put some meat in the ice cave. He couldn't pickle all the meat he brought back every time. Caesar didn't like pickled meat, and old Ku often ate that kind of meat. It wasn't good to eat it for a long time. Not to mention, now there was another bird. He couldn't feed them all pickled meat, right? It's so troublesome. Xiao Xian sighed. He could directly throw the little chick away, or give it to Caesar as food, but he always felt that he should try to raise it. 3 days later, the little chick opened its eyes. This was much earlier than Xiao Xian expected. He originally thought that the bird would be like many birds he had seen in his previous life, and that it would take at least 7 to 10 days to open its eyes. He didn't expect that it would only open its eyes after 3 days. It also had more feathers on its body, but it still couldn't walk. When it was hungry, it would cha-cha, open its mouth wide, as if it was afraid that people couldn't see or hear it. During these 3 days, Xiao Xian was at home making stoneware. Xiao Xian now had some basic tools, so he could finish most of the stoneware at home. Old Ku would occasionally come over to take a look. He asked Xiao Xian to rest for a few days and craft some stoneware. When he had enough, he would go to the training ground to train. Xiao Xian only needed 1 night of sleep to fully recover. In the past 3 days, he had polished a lot of stone tools. Some were used to set traps, some were used for training, and he had also polished a batch of better tools for the next hunt. He had already decided to follow Mai and the others on their next hunt. Xian! Someone shouted from outside. The 2 men who came over were Tu and Jie Ba, who were currently in charge of the affairs in the cave. They carried 4 fishes over to Xiao Xian. Since Xiao Xian often brought gifts to the kids in the orphanage, the kids in the orphanage would often bring some fish they caught that day to Xiao Xian. Many people never went back after they left the orphanage. For example, Ku, who was in charge of the orphanage before Xiao Xian, never went back. However, the other kids who awakened at the same time as Xiao Xian did go back a few times. Whether they wanted to go back to show off their hunting results or for other reasons, at least they did not directly cut off contact with the kids in the orphanage. Of course, this was all because Xiao Xian brought a series of changes to the kids' lives after he took over the management of the orphanage in the orphanage. No matter what happened to the other kids after they left the orphanage, Xiao Xian would always bring some food to the kids in the orphanage every time he came back from a hunt. After all, he had enough food for himself, so it was not a big deal to share some with the kids. The kids in the orphanage were also grateful to Xiao Xian. Because of Xiao Xian, their lives had changed a lot, and they were now much healthier. Xiao Xian did not refuse their kindness. It was rare for the 2 of them to bring the fish over. Although the fish could not provide much energy for Xiao Xian now, it could still improve his appetite. Every time Jie Ba and Tu came over, their eyes were filled with envy. It was really good to become a totem warrior. They could have their own cabin, hunt for more food, and grow faster. Xiao Xian was not as tall as them in the orphanage, but it had not been long since he awakened, and he was already taller than Jie Ba, who was the biggest kid in the orphanage. Don't be jealous. Maybe it will be your turn next year. Xiao Xian carried a small piece of marinated animal meat to them. As usual, everyone in the orphanage can only eat a little bit. Don't eat too much, or you will die. Every time Xiao Xian gave them the meat of the lowest level. They could not bear the meat of the higher level, and there was not much of it. If there was too much meat, they would not be able to absorb it. In the past, Mai and Lang Jie also gave Xiao Xian some lower-level meat jerky. As for the meat jerky of the 4-fanged wild boar or the thorn black wind, the kids in the orphanage could not even touch it. In the past, Xiao Xian did not know about this. But after he learned about the relationship between the 2, he strictly controlled the meat and the amount of meat he sent to the orphanage. After Jie Ba and Tu left, Xiao Xian carried a fish over. After killing it, he tore off some meat and put it in front of the little chick. The little chick opened its beak wide just now, but after the meat was put in front of it, it closed its beak tightly. Now it was the animal meat, and it continued to open its beak and swallow. You are so fucking picky. Xiao Xian cursed. Holding the fish, Xiao Xian looked at Caesar, who was lying on the side. Looking at Xiao Xian's eyes, and then looking at the fish in Xiao Xian's hands, Caesar turned its head to one side, refusing to look at Xiao Xian or the fish in Xiao Xian's hands. Fuck, you are all picky. Originally, he wanted to feed the little chick with the fish, but now it seemed that the fish was disliked by the two of them. On the 7th day, Xiao Xian had almost finished preparing the tools. He planned to go to the training ground with old Ku. After thinking for a while, Xiao Xian decided to take the little chick with him. Otherwise, who knew what the little chick would do? The little chick grew very quickly, changing its appearance every day. Xiao Xian guessed that it was because this place was special, so the birds grew quickly. Its vitality was also tenacious. Xiao Xian had no experience in raising birds, so he wasn't that careful, but the chick grew healthily. It just ate a lot every day, and not long after it slept, it would start chirping cha-cha. Now, the little chick often didn't stay in its nest. If Xiao Xian wasn't paying attention, it would jump out of the grass nest that Xiao Xian made for it, then crawl around the table. If it found Caesar lying beside the table, it would immediately roll down and land on the wolf's back. Caesar was so angry that he bared his teeth. There were a few times when he almost died under the wolf's claws. Fortunately, Caesar was obedient. He knew that Xiao Xian didn't want him to hurt the chick, so he endured it. Otherwise, he would have already eaten it as a snack. Xiao Xian felt that not only was the chick tenacious, but it was also very bold. After only a few days, it dared to directly peck Caesar's wolf nose. Although it was still a chick, its pecking strength was quite strong. Xiao Xian already had many pecking marks on the wooden stick that he used to pick meat for it. It wasn't afraid when it landed on the wolf's back. It continued to peck, and a few of Caesar's wolf fur were plucked. He didn't know if it was really bold, or if there was something wrong with its brain. It was sent flying by Caesar's kick a few times, but nothing happened. It would continue to cause trouble next time. The little chick was too noisy. It chirped cha-cha all day long. Xiao Xian directly named it Cha-Cha. On the 10th day, the brown fur on Cha-Cha's body grew denser and thicker. It could even stand up and walk, but if it walked too fast, it would fall to the ground. It wasn't very stable. Xiao Xian did what he did a few days ago. He took Cha-Cha and Caesar to find old Ku first. Then, they went to the training ground together. When Xiao Xian was training, old Ku watched from a distance. Cha-Cha also watched. The old man recently especially liked to play with the chick with a stone worm. Cha-Cha didn't eat stone worms, but it liked to peck at them for fun. Old Ku used a branch to hold a stone worm and shook it in front of it. Cha-Cha would stretch its neck and lift its weak wings a little. It would enter battle mode and then rush up to peck. Not long after, the stone worm held by old Ku was pecked to pieces. Xiao Xian came to take a rest after breaking a round of trap bombing. When he saw the pecked stone worm held by old Ku, he smiled and said, "It's too aggressive. I guess it's a fighter jet. It wants to fight everything it sees." But it was good to be fierce. It wouldn't starve to death immediately if it flew out, unless it wanted to die. Fighting chicken? Old Ku was stunned. Then, he smiled and said, "That's a good name. In the future, it will be more powerful than those chickens with beautiful tails in the mountains." Xiao Xian recalled the pheasants that were like ostriches in the mountains. If Cha-Cha grew as big as those pheasants in the mountains and attacked people, it would be impossible to keep it in the tribe. They would either kill it or throw it far away. The tribe wouldn't allow such a creature to exist. No matter if it looked like a chicken or an eagle in the future, it should be trained well. When he went back in the afternoon, Xiao Xian met Tua, who was on duty in the patrol team. "Just in time. I was going to send a message to you. I didn't expect to see you here." Tua said, "The shaman wants you to go up the mountain tomorrow." "Got it." I'll go up the mountain tomorrow. There's something good. Tuo whispered, and gave Xiao Xian a, look. The so-called something good was probably about the green thief. Xiao Xian understood. He thanked Tuo and left. On his way back, Xiao Xian opened the animal skin bag and looked at the bird that seemed to be dozing. He wondered if he should take it up the mountain tomorrow. Chapter 88. The next day, Xiao Xian directly went up the mountain with the animal skin bag. It was always good to tell the shaman when he raised a bird. Cha-Cha was in the animal skin bag. It had been put in the animal skin bag so many times that it was used to it and didn't cry out all the time. The people on the mountain were very familiar with Xiao Xian. Every time they saw Xiao Xian, someone would take the initiative to greet him. Xiao Xian would respond with a smile, no matter if they were from the Ta or the other camp. You're here. The shaman had been waiting in the stone house for a long time. When he saw Xiao Xian, the smile on his face deepened, and more wrinkles appeared on his old face. However, not everyone could be treated like this by the shaman. Not to mention, Xiao Xian was still young, and he was almost the only one among the younger generation in the tribe who could be treated like this by the shaman. Without saying anything, Xiao Xian directly walked in and sat on the straw mat. Cha-Cha. When Xiao Xian sat down, Cha-Cha, who was in the animal skin bag, made a sound. Probably because he was aware of the unfamiliar surroundings, and the animal skin bag was next to the straw mat, he made a sound of uneasiness. When Xiao Xian entered the house, the shaman glanced at the animal skin bag. Now that he heard the sound, the smile on his face turned into doubt. Xiao Xian reached out and took out Cha-Cha from the bag. Compared to 10 days ago when it was just hatched, now Xiao Xian couldn't even wrap it with one hand. This is... The shaman stared at the baby bird in Xiao Xian's hand. It's an egg I brought back last time. Xiao Xian told the shaman the whole story, so I want to try taming it. The so-called trained Caesar, trained Cha-Cha. The shaman was speechless. Seeing that the shaman was still a little confused, Xiao Xian hurriedly said, No, I mean, a trained dog and a trained falcon. Old Ku said that Cha-Cha may be an aggressive bird, so I want to try training it. When the time comes to hunt, it can help. Even if I can't bring it with me to hunt, it can be used as an aerial observer in the tribe. The shaman lowered his eyelids, but his expression did not change much. He asked calmly, What if I fail? Kill him. Xiao Xian didn't hesitate. This was the rule here. If you don't listen, you'll either die or be thrown away. Generally speaking, the way people in the tribe acted was more like the former. They were straightforward, neat, and not indecisive. They didn't have such meticulous emotions at all, and acted more violently and wildly. Very good. The shaman smiled again. This time, his smile was even deeper than when Xiao Xian entered the room. He seemed to be in a good mood. Lift it up and let me see, the witch said. Xiao Xian held the bird in his hand in front of the shaman, so that the shaman could have a better look at it. His other hand was to prevent the bird from pecking at him. The person in front of him was one of the two people with the highest status in the tribe, even slightly higher than the chief. He couldn't let it offend anyone. If it really pecked the shaman, the people in the tribe wouldn't allow it to stay. However, to Xiao Xian's surprise, Cha-Cha was very obedient today. It didn't make any noise after it came in, and it didn't seem to want to peck at anyone now. The shaman quietly looked at the young bird with a circle of fluffy feathers, and Cha-Cha quietly looked at the person in front of it. After a while, the shaman raised his bark-like hand and took a palm-sized stone plate from the short table next to him. There was some black powder in the stone plate. He dipped his index finger and middle finger in the black powder with his other hand. His thumb rubbed the black powder on the index finger and middle finger, and then bent the other 4 fingers except for the thumb, and raised his hand in front of Cha-Cha. The thumb dipped in black powder touched Cha-Cha's head. His finger touched Cha-Cha's brown and gray feathers were immediately stained with black powder. However, Cha-Cha didn't avoid it. It still stared at the shaman and was very obedient. Xiao Xian was very surprised. This bird had never been so obedient since it came out of its shell. No matter what the shaman meant, Xiao Xian knew that the shaman allowed Xiao Xian to try taming it in the tribe. Moreover, after the shaman's blessing, even if Cha-Cha didn't live well in the tribe, no one would kill it. Even if they chose to throw it far away, no one would dare to kill it. After the shaman put down the stone plate, he didn't stop there. Instead, he took out a patterned plate, the same patterned plate that Caesar had, and handed it to Xiao Xian. Obviously, this was for Cha-Cha. It was even more important than Caesar. This was a double guarantee. Xiao Xian didn't understand why the shaman valued this bird so much. It was just a bird with an unknown future that could be used as a food reserve. Could it be that the shaman could predict the future and see Cha-Cha's potential? Unfortunately, when the shaman pretended to be mysterious, no one could pry information out of him, and no one dared to. Although he looked like he was about to die, he always made people feel reverence. Throwing Cha-Cha back into the animal skin bag, Xiao Xian bowed to the shaman to show his gratitude. With the shaman's approval, it would be much more convenient to bring Cha-Cha around the tribe in the future. After the Cha-Cha's matter was settled, the shaman went straight to the point. He asked about Xiao Xian's hunting in the Green Land. Xiao Xian told him selectively, but this time, he said a little more, and mentioned that he vaguely saw the shadow of the green thief. Xiao Xian didn't think that he could hide it from the shaman for the rest of his life. He would stay in the tribe for a long time, maybe for the rest of his life, and he had no one to rely on. Because of Ta, Xiao Xian wouldn't put his hope on the chief. Besides, if Ta really became the next chief, what would he do if he wanted to make things difficult for him? It wasn't that Xiao Xian had a dark mind, but after this hunting trip, he felt that he wouldn't get along well with Ta. There were no human rights in the tribe, and everything could be decided by the higher-ups. If the higher-ups said you were wrong, and they wouldn't give you any chance to explain. After these days of observation, Xiao Xian would rather believe in the shaman, the so-called spiritual leader of the tribe. Although the development of this isolated tribe wasn't very good, it wasn't seriously abnormal either. This was all thanks to the efforts of generations of shamans, and he believed that the next shaman wouldn't be bad either. He told the shaman more and more, so that he could gradually make the shaman more confident. After quietly listening to Xiao Xian's story, the shaman didn't ask much, but handed Xiao Xian 2 medicine bags with a kind face. One is for recuperation, and the other is mixed with the green thief. Drink both of them as soon as possible, especially the green thief. Don't keep it for too long. After carefully putting the 2 medicine bags away, Xiao Xian heard the shaman ask again, "Who are you going to follow in the next hunting trip?" "I was just about to tell you that I want to follow Uncle Mai and the others in the next hunting trip," Xiao Xian said. After Ta came back, he didn't kick Xiao Xian out of the advance group. Maybe he changed his mind and wanted to continue leading Xiao Xian next time. However, Xiao Xian didn't want to do that. He wanted to follow Uncle Mai and the others, so that he could have better opportunities to gain experience. If he followed the advance group, Xiao Xian wouldn't be able to keep up with their pace, and he couldn't solve the problem with a lasso every time. Maybe after hearing Xiao Xian's answer, Ta would think that Xiao Xian didn't know what was good for him, and his impression of Xiao Xian would be even worse. But, so what? Xiao Xian didn't want to go in and be a decoration. He didn't want to go through that again. "Okay, I know." The shaman nodded. With the shaman's words, Xiao Xian didn't have to worry about anything else. Ta didn't even dare to say anything in front of the shaman, let alone refute him. Even his father, the chief of the tribe, Ao, wouldn't directly refute the shaman's decision. Before leaving, Xiao Xian bowed to the shaman again. The more Xiao Xian learned about the shaman, the more he felt that such an old man was really worthy of respect. It had nothing to do with brainwashing. When going down the mountain, Xiao Xian deliberately went to Mai and Lang Jie and asked them if the bird eggs they ate were the same as Cha-Cha. However, the answer he got was that Cha-Cha was a special case, just like other bird eggs. You hatched an egg. Lang Jie said in surprise. Xiao Xian didn't know what to say. He didn't like the sound of that. Lang Jie was surprised. He pulled Xiao Xian's animal skin bag over and opened it to take a look. He even reached his hand in to take out the Cha-Cha to have a closer look. This bird was blessed by the shaman. Lang Ga's hand was pecked hard as soon as he put it in. If it weren't for his thick skin, other people who hadn't awakened their totemic power would definitely bleed. This bird is fierce enough. It's better than Caesar. Obviously, Lang Ga's standard of good was the same as Keek's. For most people in the tribe, no matter if it was a beast or a ferocious beast, the fiercer it was, the better. The fiercer it was, the greater the sense of achievement when slaughtering it. By the way, Xian, when you go back, check your house. The rainy season is coming. Although your house was just built this year, it's better to check it carefully. Prepare more dry wood at home. Rainy season. Xiao Xian thought about what happened last year. Indeed, the rainy season was coming. Chapter 89. It was raining cats and dogs. The raindrops were densely packed, hitting the ground rapidly. The sound of muddy water splashing could be heard everywhere. The leaves rustled as they were hit by the rain, and the sound made people wonder if the raindrops would pierce through the leaves. In the curtain of rain, a figure flashed through the forest. A stone needle as thin as a toothpick pierced through the curtain of rain and pierced through the dense branches at an extremely fast speed. With a tut sound, it pierced into a short wooden stake as thick as an arm hanging there. At this time, there were many similar stone needles piercing the wooden stake from different angles, making it look like a hedgehog. There were many such wooden stakes hanging nearby. Some were in the grass, some were hidden in the bushes, and some were hanging on the trees. Whoosh! After a quick dragging sound, the wooden stakes in different places moved faster. At the same time, more stone needles flew out. Tut, tut, tut. On the grass, in the bushes, in the air. Everywhere, there were more stone needles on the stumps. The pitter-patter of raindrops hitting the ground did not cause the stone needles to deviate at all. Whoosh! The figure in the rain turned over, jumped over the branches in front of him, and landed steadily. The sound of landing was inaudible in the surrounding raindrops. Xiao Xian wiped his face and went to pick up the wooden stakes. He had been training like this these days. At first, he practiced spearhead darts, then he practiced thinner stone thorns, and now he was practicing stone needles that were thinner than stone thorns. He thought of the white hares he encountered in the Greenland hunting ground. They were so soft, but they could pierce through thick planks. Even the body of a mid-level totem warrior could not resist them. One of the reasons was the material of the white hares. Another, more important reason was that the white hares were very fast. This was something that Xiao Xian was trying to do. He hoped that one day he would be able to use a thin blade of grass to pierce through a thick wooden board. But for now, he could only practice step by step. If he couldn't even use stone, then he wouldn't be able to use grass. There was still a long way to go. Because it had been raining these days, Xiao Xian did not let old Ku come out. It was a torture to come out in such heavy rain. Every time Gu went to old Ku to get some stone tools, he would mock old Ku for becoming weak. In the past, he used to walk up the mountain step by step with his crutches. He did not ask for help when he went out, but now. Old Ku rode Caesar when he went out and relied on Xiao Xian when he went up the mountain. He did not even go out when it was raining. He was so damn delicate. Old Ku was not annoyed. He did what he was supposed to do and pretended that he did not hear anything. Gu Na was filled with jealousy and jealousy. He would not tell Gu that Xiao Xian had asked for some herbs from the shaman. He was in the recuperation period. In the past, he had a negative mentality and did not care whether he lived or died. But now, he wanted to live a few more years and see how far Xiao Xian could go. Caesar and Cha-Cha were left at Old Ku's place. Xiao Xian sometimes wondered if he should expand the house and let Old Ku move in with him. Anyway, he was alone, and Old Ku was alone. It would save him the trouble of running between the two places every day. While thinking, Xiao Xian was tidying up the wooden stakes and the grass ropes. Last year, the rainy season would start after the next hunting trip. Unfortunately, it was earlier this year. The shaman asked everyone to be prepared, and the hunting team that was going to set off had to postpone their trip. Behind Xiao Xian, a slender worm like a snake slithered out from a tree. Different from a snake, it had many legs. Sticking out its tongue like a snake, it stared at Xiao Xian who was under the tree. Its body slid down the trunk silently, and its slender legs allowed it to stay on the trunk steadily. When it got close to Xiao Xian, it twisted its body and coiled its front half, forming an S shape. Then it aimed at Xiao Xian and opened its mouth to bite the back of Xiao Xian's neck like an arrow released from a bow. Xiao Xian didn't even look behind him. He just casually raised his hand, and when it was only half a palm away from his neck, he had already blocked in front of it and tightly choked its neck. His fingers tightened slightly. Crack! Crack! The worm's head was separated from its body. Xiao Xian flicked his finger and flicked the worm's head to one side of the grass, while the headless worm's body was flung to the other side of the forest when he withdrew his hand. During the whole process, Xiao Xian did not look at the worm at all. After tidying up the stone needles, Xiao Xian stood up and glanced around. He had seen those worms several times in the past 2 days. He heard that they would come out of the ground every year during the rainy season. Not only these worms, but other creatures would also come out of the ground one after another. But except during the rainy season, these worms would almost never appear in the mountains of the training ground. Stepping on the muddy ground, Xiao Xian suddenly lifted his foot and kicked a stone away. The stone that was kicked away was mixed with muddy water, and it shot straight to the grass. A 2-palm-long scorpion-like worm that had just come out of the ground was pierced through by the stone. Old Ku said that the worms that came out of the ground during the rainy season would take the initiative to hurt people, and they were very poisonous. Don't get bitten or stung by them, and kill everyone you see. If there was really nothing to eat, he could only start with them. You'll know when the time comes. Lang Jie didn't want to say too much. Anyway, you won't starve to death. Xiao Xian was really curious now. According to Lang Ga's words, it was not the kind of insects that appeared in the training ground, but something else. It's only once a year. Although it may be dangerous, you'll be fine as long as you're careful. Don't worry. Lang Jie clenched his fist and hammered Xiao Xian's shoulder to encourage him. Xiao Xian rubbed his shoulder and looked at the river in the rain. From time to time, river overlords would appear on the river surface in the distance. After observing those river overlords, Xiao Xian had some doubts. Those river overlords seemed to be heading in the same direction, which could be seen from the way they leaped. If it was an individual case, it would be fine. But all the river overlords that appeared on the water surface were all heading in the same direction. There was no exception. Is that the upstream or downstream of the river? Xiao Xian pointed at the direction where the river overlords leaped and asked Lang Ga, upstream or downstream? I don't know. I've never been there. It's too far. Lang Jie didn't care. For him, there was no difference between upstream and downstream of the river, so he didn't think too much about it. Xiao Xian looked in that direction, thinking about where it was and why those river overlords were heading in that direction. The river was big enough. If it wasn't fresh water, people would think that it was a sea at first glance. A sea? Could it be a river that flowed into the sea? Xiao Xian recalled the 2 hunting expeditions he went out with the hunting team, and speculated about the direction and terrain. He came to a conclusion that those river overlords were probably heading downstream of the river. If this river really flowed into the sea, then why would those river overlords swim towards the sea during the rainy season? Many fish would swim back and forth periodically due to reproduction, food, wintering, and many other factors. This was the so-called migratory characteristic. Then, were these river overlords also carrying out similar migratory behavior? Xiao Xian shook his head. Everything was just a guess. Even if he asked Lang Jie and the others, they wouldn't get the answer, because they didn't even know what a sea was. Whether those river overlords were swimming in a direction during the rainy season or not, Xiao Xian couldn't do anything about it now. However, when he went back later, Xiao Xian would record these phenomena in his notebook. Xiao Xian had already sorted out some animals' skins suitable for recording things, including the pictures he saw in the cave. Xiao Xian had drawn them out from memory and stored them away. If the animal skins couldn't be kept for too long, he would copy them on stone slabs. Xiao Xian moved his eyes away from those giant beasts in the distance, and looked at the river bank for a while. Suddenly, he said, Lang Jie, do you think it's okay to build some fish fences here? Lang Jie was thinking about how much food they could get this rainy season, but Xiao Xian's words pulled him back to reality. He asked in confusion, fish fences? What's that? It's something made of wooden sticks and nets to catch fish. Xiao Xian roughly described it, and then continued, I'm thinking if we can use these fish fences to make a simple trap. Trap? Lang Ga's eyes suddenly lit up. It's actually very simple. Xiao Xian took out his stone knife and drew on the ground. Lang Jie, who also knew how to set traps, could infer what Xiao Xian meant when he saw what Xiao Xian said and connected it to the drawing on the ground. Patting his head, Lang Jie said regretfully, why didn't I think of this before? Xiao Xian wanted to make a simple fish fence-style trap. It wasn't difficult, and it didn't require any more sophisticated settings. Like setting a fish fence, it was just a fence made of wood or stone pillars. The fish fences would roll inwards like mosquito coils, but some were round inwards, and some were square inwards. Xiao Xian wanted to see the differences. The only opening of this kind of simple fish fence-style trap was facing the river. Or he could use the fish fences to make a pocket, like the letter omega, omega. Unlike the former, this kind of trap had its back facing the river, so when the tide went down, the fish swimming in would be trapped inside. Unless the fish swimming in were very intelligent, they could generally be trapped. Xiao Xian had tried it in his previous life. However, Xiao Xian had never participated in the tribe's rainy season patrol, so he didn't know if he could add such a setting, so he asked Lang Ga, yes. No problem at all. Lang Jie looked at the river level that hadn't started to rise yet, and called Xiao Xian, let's hurry up and find some stones. Before the river level rises, let's set up this trap. Because some things in the river ate wood, they couldn't use wood to set up fish fences. They could only use stones. However, when they didn't pay attention to stones, it was relatively easy to make stone pillars for the fish fences. Therefore, when Mai brought the first group of people to start patrolling, he saw Xiao Xian and Lang Jie working on the river bank. From the place near the river to the stone line set up by the tribe, there were fish fences at a certain distance. Because they were in a hurry and didn't pay attention to aesthetics, the stone pillars weren't uniform in thickness. Some of them were even as thick as a person's thigh, and people could stand steadily on them. Chapter 91. What are you doing? Is this a trap? Mai came over and asked. When the river rises, we can stand on it. The person standing next to Mai laughed. They didn't know why Xiao Xian and Lang Jie were doing this, but they all knew that Lang Jie was interested in setting traps. Although most of the time he only set traps like ground bows, he would also set some other traps. Lang Jie told the others about his and Xiao Xian's idea, and they were all very curious. As for the fish fences here, it was not a problem for them, but also convenient for them. When the river rose, they could even jump on them. You should go back. We'll patrol tonight. Lang Jie, you bring some people here early tomorrow. Mai said. Okay, we'll go back as soon as we finish the last one. I didn't notice it just now, but now I realize that I'm really hungry. Lang Jie touched his belly and looked at his work, very satisfied. Xiao Xian, who had finished his last fish fence, found that the people who came with Mai had brought not only their own stone tools and animal skin bags with food, but also a straw net. Uncle Mai, what are you going to do with the straw net? Xiao Xian asked. Well, Mai smiled, of course it's for food. Seeing that Xiao Xian was still confused, Mai said, you'll know when you come here tomorrow. By the way, remember to bring a big net bag when you come here tomorrow. Although Xiao Xian didn't know what they were going to put in the net bag, he still prepared a net bag for them. The next day, Xiao Xian brought Caesar and Cha Cha to Old Ku's place early in the morning, and then went to the patrol area. When Xiao Xian arrived, Lang Jie and the other patrolmen were already there. What surprised Xiao Xian was that Mai and the others' straw nets were filled with watermelon-sized snails. Not only that, but they could also see that near the river bank, sharp horns that were gradually growing in size appeared on the surface of the river. Those were all conches, and they were all moving towards the river bank. Although it didn't seem like a lot now, if they continued like this, everyone would be able to get a lot by the time the patrol ended. Just look at the microphones and they would know. Their shells were so thick that even the piranhas in the river couldn't do anything to them. However, the people in the tribe were different. After all, people could use tools to pull them out of their shells. Don't be fooled by their hard shells. If you take them back and cook them, the shells will break easily. In the past, some people wanted to use their shells to make things, but after a period of time, they broke easily, Mai said to Xiao Xian. Even if these snails didn't provide much energy individually, the quantity was there, and they could indeed solve the food problem. No wonder Lang Jie wasn't worried. According to Mai, these snails usually didn't come out. They would only come ashore in large batches after the rainy season officially started. The good thing was that these snails didn't have any attack power. They were completely provided as rations for people who were short of food during the rainy season. They didn't know if there were any parasites, but judging from the people in the tribe who had been eating these snails for so many years, there shouldn't be any problem. Since the people who changed shifts had arrived, Mai and the others didn't stay for long. After a night of rain, they hurried back to eat something and sleep. After a good rest, they would come back to continue the patrol. You guys stay here first. If you find something abnormal that you can't deal with, blow the whistle immediately. Do you hear me? Mai said to Lang Jie and the others. Got it. It's not the first time we patrol in the rainy season. I've already told Xian. I'll take care of him. Don't worry. Lang Jie waved to Mai, and then immediately rushed over to check the fish fences made yesterday. The rain didn't stop. At most, it would only rain a little. The river level had risen a lot compared to yesterday. Yesterday, more than half of the fish fences closest to the river were already submerged in the water. At this level, no fish would get in. It was still early, and they didn't find anything abnormal on the river. Xiao Xian picked up the snails with the others. Xiao Xian didn't know which species these snails belonged to. They had different shapes and colors, but Lang Jie said they could all be eaten. Xiao Xian didn't care too much. When they climbed ashore, he directly picked them up and threw them into the straw net. However, they stuck close to the ground, so it was not easy to pull them down from the stones on the slippery areas. They didn't encounter any problems for most of the day. Except for the various snails climbing to the river bank, there was nothing else. When Xiao Xian went back that day, he sent a lot of snails to the kids in the orphan cave and Old Ku. After all, he couldn't eat so many snails by himself. Caesar didn't eat snails, but Cha-Cha enjoyed them for a while. She only tried to peck the snails out of the shells for fun. On the third day of Xiao Xian's patrol, the river level had completely surpassed the first fish fence. The first fish fence was not big, only 2 meters in diameter. At that time, they thought it was too small, so they didn't tear it down and rebuild it. Instead, they made the second fish fence much bigger. Therefore, when the river level surpassed the first fish fence, the second fish fence, which was almost parallel to the first one, was only partly submerged in the water. What do you think? Lang Jie picked up the snails and threw them into the straw net, and shouted to Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian stood by the first fish fence and looked inside carefully. There were no fish. Other than that, there were no piranhas with big heads and mouths full of sharp teeth. There were no other fishes around, as if they had all disappeared. When the water level was rising, there was not even a single fish to be seen. So, the fish fences were all for nothing? No, he could wait and see what else was in the river besides the fishes. Just keep them. Xiao Xian looked at the fish fences under his feet, and decided to leave them here for the time being. He would remove them when the water level went down. Anyway, they wouldn't interfere with the patrol. Nothing. Xiao Xian answered. When he got up and was about to go to the bank, Xiao Xian suddenly felt a chill sweep over him. Danger! Just when he was about to jump away from the fish fences and run to the bank, he heard Lang Ga's hurried shout. Don't move. Don't move. To move, or not to move. These two thoughts flashed through Xiao Xian's mind in an instant. In the end, Xiao Xian decided to follow Lang Ga's words and stay there. Although he didn't move, the muscles all over his body were ready to move. Once something happened, he would move to the next step. His hand had already touched the stone knife. On the other side, Lang Jie didn't have time to pick up the snails anymore. He ran over with the others, and when he ran, he threw the snails in his hand into the water 30 meters away from Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian could hear the snails falling into the river, but the needle-like gaze was still there. Xiao Xian was frozen in place, maintaining his previous posture, not moving an inch. If he looked up, he would be able to see the source of the cold gaze. But at this moment, Xiao Xian held back, and his eyes didn't wander. Not far away from Xiao Xian, a triangular head appeared on the surface of the water. There were 2 round eyes on the head. At this moment, a soft sound came from the water in front of him. It wasn't obvious in the rain, but Xiao Xian heard it clearly. Gua! Xiao Xian, fuck! He finally knew why Lang Jie told him not to move. Chapter 92. On Lang Ga's side, a few people were trying to attract attention. Xiao Xian felt the gaze in front of him stare at him for about 2 minutes before moving away. Xian, run! Lang Jie shouted from the side. There was no need for Lang Jie to shout. Xiao Xian had already sensed that the other party had moved away from him. His legs gathered strength in an instant, and his bent knees shot out. Crack! The stone pillar under his feet suddenly cracked, and Xiao Xian's body shot out like an arrow. The moment Xiao Xian left the stone pillar, he caught a glimpse of a long shadow shooting out and then retreating quickly from the corner of his eye. If Xiao Xian had been a little slower, he might have been swept by that long shadow. Xiao Xian knew what that long shadow was. If he was touched by it, he would be directly dragged into the water. At the same time, Lang Jie and the others had already thrown the spears in their hands at the creature in the water. They didn't dare to directly throw the spears earlier because Xiao Xian's position could easily injure him. Now that Xiao Xian had left, they didn't have to be restrained. The muscles on their arms bulged as they threw the spears in their hands. The stone spears pierced through the curtain of rain. Xiao Xian could still hear the whooshing sound of the spears as they flew through the air. Puff! 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 3 spears pierced the body of the creature in the water, and red blood flowed out. If the piranhas were here, they would have followed the smell and come over to snatch it. But now, other than the struggling of the creature that had been shot, there was nothing else. Whooshing! Another 2 spears were thrown. Long straw ropes were tied to the spears. Obviously, they were used to drag the prey that had just been shot to the shore. As the people on the shore retracted the straw ropes, Xiao Xian finally saw the figure of the creature. It was a little different from what he had imagined. The creature that had been dragged to the shore did indeed look like a frog, but what was more obvious was that it had a long tail behind it. A tadpole? A tadpole that had not yet developed into a frog but had grown both front and rear limbs? Xiao Xian didn't expect to see something like this when he heard the screams just now. The long-tailed frog that was shot was still struggling, but its struggle was a little weaker than before. Its forelimbs and back legs were kicking, leaving marks on the riverbank. After the long-tailed frog was stabbed a few more times and stopped struggling, Xiao Xian took a closer look. In addition to its long tail, its limbs were webbed instead of toes. Opening its mouth, there were some sharp teeth in its mouth. Other than that, it looked exactly like a fully transformed frog. Not only that, but the size of this long-tailed frog also made Xiao Xian speechless. Not counting its long tail, its body length was already more than 5 meters long. No wonder Lang Jie and the others were so nervous. It was Xiao Xian's first time seeing such a big frog with fangs and a long tail. I was almost scared to death just now. Seeing that Xiao Xian was safe and sound, Lang Jie let out a long sigh of relief. Then, he warned Xiao Xian, "This thing came out. You have to be careful from now on. It's best not to go to the fish fence for the next few days." Whether or not they could catch fish was a small matter. Their safety was the most important thing. Lang Jie still had a lingering fear. He didn't expect the thing in the water to come out so soon. When he saw the 2 round eyes peeking out of the water very close to Xiao Xian, Lang Jie felt as if a basin of cold water had been splashed on his face. Some of the people who had been on patrol had been swept into the water. Those who had been pulled into the river never came back. Although everyone had taken precautions and hunted many of these things every year, they still fell into the trap if they were not careful. In front of the prey, they couldn't be careless. Watching the others slaughter the long-tailed frog, Lang Jie told Xiao Xian some things he needed to pay attention to. He also told Xiao Xian about some previous tragedies, in order to attract Xiao Xian's attention. As for this thing, it's not bad to eat. We can still hunt some now, but in 2 days, it will be difficult to do so, Lang Jie said. On the same day, Xiao Xian hunted 3 long-tailed frogs with Lang Jie and the others. Except for the different patterns on the surface of the skin, these 3 frogs were all strange species with large fangs and long tails. The people on patrol shared some of the frogs and brought them back after the patrol. It was not bad to eat. Although it was not as tender as the frog meat that Xiao Xian had eaten in his previous life, it contained more energy than snail meat. The rainy season here was relatively short compared to winter, but it was not a matter of 1 or 2 days. It was about 30 days. No one could tell the exact time, because it was different every year. 2 days later, because of the incessant rain, the river level rose a lot. Xiao Xian thought that at this rate, it would take less than 10 days to cross the stone line, but the others didn't seem worried at all. When Xiao Xian came to the riverbank to patrol, from the shallow water to the deeper areas, he could see a lot of slightly triangular heads and round eyes along the riverbank, densely packed. No wonder Lang Jie said that it was difficult to hunt. There were so many long-tailed frogs. Before you could pull the frogs ashore, the straw rope would be pulled into the river by them. Sometimes, when he had nothing to do, Lang Jie would stuff mud into the shell of a snail and then throw it over, watching the long-tailed frogs shoot out their long tongues to snatch the food. Like the frogs that Xiao Xian knew, the long-tailed frogs also caught moving things. Many times, the snails thrown over were swept away by their long tongues before they fell into the water. Those long-tailed frogs never went ashore. At most, they would lie down in the shallow water, showing their triangular heads and a pair of round eyes. They also rarely croaked, unlike Xiao Xian's imagination. Occasionally, he would hear a small and short gua sound. As the river level rose, every day when Xiao Xian went over, the patrol would retreat. Because of the existence of the long-tailed frogs, they had to keep a safe distance from the river. Until one day, when Xiao Xian came to the riverbank, he found that the long-tailed frogs lying near the riverbank had all disappeared, and the river level, which had risen to the 7th fish fence, had begun to recede. The rainy season was not over. Lang Jie told Xiao Xian that this was only the first time the river level had receded in the rainy season, and there would be a few more times of receding. After the first receding, all the long-tailed frogs would disappear, and there would be no need to worry about them appearing again. At the same time, Xiao Xian also noticed that when the river level receded, the river flow, which had gradually become obvious because of the rising water during the rainy season, had changed. Now, the river did not flow in the direction where the river overlords swam, but upstream, as Xiao Xian guessed. The change in the river flow, and the disappearance of the long-tailed frogs overnight, all told Xiao Xian that something had happened upstream. According to Lang Jie, the river level would recede several times during the rainy season, and every time the river level receded, the river flow would change. Every year during the rainy season, there were many things that they did not know about. Because of these strange phenomena, the people in the tribe felt that this boundless river was even more mysterious. They were not willing to explore it, and did not dare to explore it. When the river level receded for the first time, Xiao Xian saw the wood-eating insect in the 7th fish fence. The 7th fish fence was set up by Xiao Xian. He put a few pieces of wood in the fence, but he did not expect that the river level would recede, and the wood-eating insect would be trapped inside temporarily. The wood-eating insect was like a mass of thick mucus. When it smelled the existence of wood, it would stick to the wood, or directly grow, and then pull the wood down. However, Xiao Xian found that there were many trees in the flooded areas, and those trees were not eaten much. If a small piece of wood was thrown into the river, it would be pulled down after more than an hour. Normally, it would not take more than 2 minutes for the floating wood to disappear. Obviously, the wood-eating insect's activities were also very abnormal during the rainy season. Therefore, Xiao Xian would put a piece of wood in the water every day when he was patrolling, to see how long it would take for it to be pulled down. A thin straw rope was tied to the wood, and the other end of the rope was tied to the stone pillar, so that it would not float away. After returning, Xiao Xian would record the results of the day in his secret notebook. This rainy season only lasted for 27 days, which was a few days shorter than last year. This was a normal phenomenon. According to the old warriors, the longest rainy season they had experienced was 40 days, but the shortest rainy season was no less than 25 days. When the rain stopped, the lingering dark clouds in the sky dispersed, and the long-awaited sun shone on the land once again. Everyone in the tribe felt as sunny as the weather. The children who had been cooped up in the house for nearly 30 days ran out happily, and ran around barefoot, laughing loudly. The children in the cave also began to prepare things. The rainy season was over, and they could continue to fish. For the time being, they did not have to worry about being dazed by the roars from the river. Why was it temporary? Because the river monsters that had stopped roaring would appear again after a while, and roar again. Xian, let's go back. Lang Jie and the others had already packed up and were ready to leave. I'll go back right away. You guys go first. Xiao Xian responded. After the rainy season, as long as they did not go into the water, they would not be in danger, so Lang Jie was not worried. After Lang Jie and the others left, Xiao Xian took out a wooden boat from the animal skin bag. This was a simple sailboat he made in the last few days of patrolling, with the wood and some small stone nails he stored in the house every day after returning home. The sail was only made of the leaves of a kind of plant, and the planks were also ordinary wood. The hull of the sailboat was only 2 palms long. The wind blew from the river bank to the river. Xiao Xian put the simple sailboat on the river, and with a little force from his fingers, the hull was pushed away. It swayed and was blown away by the wind, away from the shoal of the river bank, to the place where the boundary could not be seen. The green on the boat was particularly conspicuous. There were a lot of piranhas in the river. These big-headed, low-IQ guys that had disappeared for a rainy season began to be active again, even more active than before the rainy season. Throwing a small piece of bloody meat into the river could cause them to fight for a long time, and they were very energetic. The good thing was that they were not interested in wood, and the wood-eating insects in the river that were interested in wood seemed to have disappeared. Standing by the river and watching for a while, Xiao Xian carried his things and left. When he went up the mountain, he looked back at the river, and could see the little dot below Yangguang gradually drifting away. Well, that's it for tonight. I'll continue tomorrow. Good night, everyone. Chapter 93. After the end of the rainy season, it was Ta's hunting team's turn to go hunting. This time, Xiao Xian followed Mai's hunting team to the mountaintop. When they gathered to sing the hunting song, Ta did not say anything when he saw Xiao Xian. He just looked a little unhappy, but he did not dare to show it. It seemed that the shaman had talked to him, so he did not dare to say anything. Even if he had any thoughts, he had to keep them to himself. If he showed it, it would be disrespectful to the shaman. Ta also held his breath. He thought that even without Xiao Xian, they could still get more plants. Even if they needed to set traps, could no one in the advance group know how to do that? Did the ancestors only protect Xiao Xian, but not the elites in the tribe? He did not believe it. The other hunting team members also looked at Xiao Xian with curiosity, especially the young warriors. When they looked at Xiao Xian, they were obviously gloating. Their eyes seemed to say, "See, I told you. That guy will definitely be kicked out of the advance group." Lang Jie was worried that Xiao Xian would think too much, so he kept comforting him on the way up the mountain. However, he did not know that Xiao Xian did not care about it at all. He was the one who had suggested it. Caesar and Cha-Cha were left in Old Ku's place. There was still some food left, and they all moved there. There was still some food in the ice cave on the mountaintop, so they would not starve. The hunting time was a little tight this time. As soon as the rainy season was over, Ta quickly gathered the leaders of each hunting team to prepare for the hunting trip. They had to come back before the full moon, because during the full moon, the beasts in the forest would be extremely violent. Therefore, according to past experience, no matter which hunting team went out at this time, they must make sure to come back before the full moon. It would be best if they could come back a few days earlier. Last time, when Xiao Xian went hunting with Mai and the others, the hunting team stopped at the second foothold on the hunting route because of the discovery of the ancestors. But this time, the hunting in the first and second footholds went smoothly, and Xiao Xian followed them to the third foothold. There were many lakes in the hunting ground of the third foothold. After the rainy season, the water level of the larger lakes rose, and a few smaller lakes appeared in other places. After the rainy season, many wild beasts came out to play, including many ferocious beasts. With the previous hunting experience and the increase in strength, the harvest this time was very rich. Because of the large proportion of high-level prey, the prey brought back this time was enough to last more than 50 days. In the tribe, Old Ku was not as worried as before. After thinking about it, Old Ku concluded that Xiao Xian did not say, "Don't worry," before setting off. And that was the truth. This hunting went very smoothly, and Xiao Xian also let go of his responsibilities, assisting, killing, setting traps, and so on. He was no longer a walk-on. Xiao Xian was very satisfied with the fruitful hunting. The only difference from the previous hunting trips was that as the moon became rounder and rounder at night, the forest at night seemed to be covered with a layer of hazy silver light, and the view was not so dark. But at the same time, the wild beasts and ferocious beasts at night were obviously becoming more and more violent. No matter day or night, they could hear all kinds of wild beasts and ferocious beasts roaring more frequently than before. 20 days later, the hunting team returned to the tribe. In the last few days, because of the frequent attacks of the wild beasts, many people in each hunting group had been injured. Fortunately, they had been prepared for this. Although many people were injured, only 3 people were seriously injured. Compared to the current situation, 3 people were not that serious. Fortunately, no one in Mai's hunting team was seriously injured. When they returned to the tribe, Xiao Xian found that the level of the river at the foot of the mountain had decreased a lot. The fish fences were still there. The first fish fence was originally close to the river, and after the end of the rainy season, the rising river level fell back down. Compared with before the rainy season, the river level was only a little higher, and the river water was in contact with the first fish fence. But now, more than 20 days had passed. When they came back, the river level had decreased a lot, even lower than before the rainy season. It's going to be a full moon soon, and the river level will decrease faster in the next few days. Lang Jie said. After thinking for a while, Lang Jie smiled and said, "The fish fences we set didn't catch anything during the rainy season, but after the full moon this time, maybe we will catch something." The strange thing about this world was that the 2 moons in the night sky were only full once a year. At that time, the 2 moons in the night sky would meet, overlap, and then separate again, moving in different directions. The night of the full moon was the time when the 2 moons overlapped. At this time last year, Xiao Xian, like the other children, spent most of his time in the cave. He didn't get close to the river, so naturally, he didn't see the ebb and flow of the river. This year, there were more people fishing, but when the river level decreased, they were still not allowed to touch the water. Those who were supposed to stay in the cave continued to stay in the cave. After collecting the game, Xiao Xian led Caesar and Cha-Cha back. They have been a little restless recently. You should pay attention to them. Old Ke said. Xiao Xian saw the pile of bones next to him. The long bones were bitten into small pieces, and Caesar didn't eat them, so he just threw them there. There were many scratches on the ground made by the wolf's claws. As for Cha-Cha, she was very active before. She wanted to peck at everything she saw. She even used her claws to scratch in Cha-Cha. But recently, she became very quiet and motionless. If she wasn't sleeping, she was just squatting in her nest and didn't go anywhere. After Xiao Xian returned to the wooden house, he looked at the energetic Caesar and the unusually quiet Cha-Cha. After thinking for a while, he took out his knife and decided to make something. During this hunting trip, the leaves of a tree reminded Xiao Xian of a small toy. Boomerang, also known as a boomerang, was something that Xiao Xian used to play with when he was a child. It could be made with paper, but in the tribe, it was better to use wood. Xiao Xian made a V-shaped boomerang. After becoming proficient in making stone and wood, it wasn't difficult to make a boomerang like this. He was very familiar with it. In less than an hour, Xiao Xian walked out of the door with the finished product. "Caesar, come out." Xiao Xian called out the wolf that was wandering around the house. He patted the wolf's head with the boomerang in his hand and said, "I'll throw it out. You pick it up." When he trained Caesar in the past, Xiao Xian would sometimes throw out a branch or a bone for Caesar to pick up. So, Caesar was familiar with this. Seeing Caesar's eyes on the boomerang in his hand, Xiao Xian knew that he was ready. He threw the boomerang in his hand. The boomerang that was thrown out quickly flew away. But soon, it flew in an arc to the left. After a big circle, it flew back to Xiao Xian. Caesar, who had been chasing after the boomerang, was very puzzled. He didn't understand why the boomerang would come back by itself. When Xiao Xian threw it out again, he ran after it again. What? Tuo and Kiki, who came to find Xiao Xian, were very surprised to see a piece of wood thrown out by Xiao Xian. The piece of wood made a big circle in the air and came back to Xiao Xian. What is this? Tuo came over and asked curiously. They had gained a lot in this hunting trip. Compared to their previous hunting trips, the quantity was still considerable. But in terms of quality, it was not as good as the green thief and the wind ball. Even though some people in the team had set up traps outside at night, they still didn't gain anything. Some of the traps were even destroyed by unknown forces. He came to find Xiao Xian to ask if Xiao Xian wanted to join the advance group again. Unexpectedly, he saw such a novel thing as soon as he arrived. This is a boomerang. Xiao Xian said. Can I have a try? Tuo was itching to try. Sure. Xiao Xian handed the boomerang to Tuo and explained the technique. Won't it really be thrown away? Tuo was still unsure. After all, he was used to throwing stone spears and other things. He always felt that this thing would fly far away once it was thrown out. As for flying back, no. Xiao Xian said affirmatively. Okay, let me try first. Tuo gave it a try. Seeing that it could really fly back, he was relieved and used more strength for the second time. Kiki, who was standing next to Tuo, opened his eyes wide without blinking. He saw the piece of wood thrown out by Tuo and then fly back again. He swallowed his saliva and rubbed his palms. Let me do it. When Tuo caught the flying boomerang, Kiki rushed to grab it. However, the result of his carelessness was that the wooden boomerang was broken before it could be thrown out. Chapter 94. Kiki was beaten up by Tuo and dragged away. Before they left, Tuo and Kiki asked Xiao Xian to make 2 boomerangs for them without hesitation. Boomerangs were said to be invented by some aborigines. But here, boomerangs were not very helpful for hunting. Thinking of the ferocious beasts in the forest, they knew that boomerangs could not harm them at all. However, they could also be used to drive away birds and beasts, or as bait to attract the attention of ferocious beasts. Before Tuo left, he asked Xiao Xian whether he would join the advance group again. Xiao Xian did not give a clear answer, he only said that he would think about it when he was more powerful. Tuo and Kiki's coming here might not have been ordered by Ta, but Ta must have known about it, and he did not stop them. No matter what Ta thought, Xiao Xian did not plan to join the advance group again. He felt more comfortable in Mai's hunting group. Because of Xiao Xian's previous achievements, the shaman would give him the herbs he needed. Xiao Xian gave those herbs to old Ku, who now looked much more energetic than before. When he came to himself, he saw that Caesar was still squatting on the ground, looking at the broken boomerang. Xiao Xian walked over and picked up the broken boomerang. He threw it into the house and made a fire later. He patted Caesar's head to comfort him, and said, I'll make you a new one tomorrow. Probably because of the exercise during the day, Caesar's vigorous energy had decreased a lot. At night, Caesar was a little quieter. Xiao Xian stood at the door, looking at the night sky. The 2 moons, which were almost full, had met. According to the old warriors, the river level would drop faster when the 2 moons met. The change was obvious. The next day, when Xiao Xian came to the river, he saw that the river level had dropped a lot compared to yesterday. The river was also rushing downstream, as if something was sucking it downstream. This indeed confirmed the old warriors' words. They said that when the moon was full, the river would disappear. After the river level dropped, a lot of sand was exposed. Things could be seen moving in the sand. Sometimes, an unknown bird would fly to the sand to peck, but sometimes, a big mouth would jump out from the sand and bite the bird into the sand. Even if there was only sand left, it was still dangerous. No wonder the tribe didn't allow people to get close to that area. Not to mention the fact that the sand could easily sink in, just the creatures hiding in the sand were enough to scare everyone. In the next few days, the two moons overlapped more and more, and the river flowed faster and faster. Now, standing next to the first fish fence, there was nothing but sand in front of their eyes. However, because the river level was falling, they could see the bottom of the river. In addition to the sand, there were also some strange-looking aquatic plants. Some were like corals, and some were like ordinary aquatic plants, but they could move on their own. Less than 10 meters from the first fish fence, there was a steep slope. More than 100 meters away, the river was very deep. It even made people feel like they were in a bottomless abyss. A river that allowed the river overlords to live freely must not be an ordinary river. It was just that they didn't know how deep the river was. Before the river disappeared, Xiao Xian would throw a piece of wood into the river and watch the wood flow downstream. Until it was out of their sight, none of the wood would sink. Obviously, some creatures that ate wood were still not in the river. As the time of the two moons was getting closer and closer, not only Caesar and Cha-Cha's symptoms were getting more and more obvious, but the night swallow creatures were also getting more and more rampant. Other people couldn't hear the night swallow's sound, but Xiao Xian could. He could hear the night swallow creatures' excitement from their sounds. This bloodthirsty excitement made them overcome their fear of fire. Even if someone walked around at night with a torch, they would be attacked by the night swallow creatures. Many night swallow creatures were burned to death by the fire. However, the night swallow creatures only had eyes for their targets. Caesar would howl like the wolves in the forest these days. Last year, Caesar's symptoms were not as obvious as now, probably because he was still young, so he didn't howl. However, this year was different. At first, the patrolling warriors thought that wolves had entered the tribe, but when they came, they found out that it was Caesar. After all, Caesar didn't howl like that in the tribe before. Cha-Cha now nestled in its nest every day and didn't go anywhere, as if it felt that there was danger outside. If it wasn't for its increasing appetite, Xiao Xian would have thought that it was sick. As for the river at the foot of the mountain, the most intuitive feeling was that the river had gone far away, as if there had never been a river at the foot of the mountain. It had really disappeared, leaving behind only an abyss filled with mud and sand. Looking up, looking into the distance, there was nothing. There was no river, no other shore, and it was impossible to see where the border was. If it wasn't for the old warrior's warning, Xiao Xian would also have a psychological fear of the unknown because of such a strange phenomenon. On the day when the two moons completely overlapped, the night was as bright as day. After the two moons overlapped, it was as if the two moons had merged into one, becoming much bigger. The full moon in the night sky was like a huge pale eyeball overlooking everything on the ground. That night, Night Swallow danced wildly above the abyss where the river had disappeared, but it didn't fly back into the tribe. The creatures that disappeared during the rainy season all came back with the river. The rumbling sound gradually faded away, but the voices of the kings of the river were heard all night. It was believed that this night, many people in the tribe couldn't sleep, just like Xiao Xian. Chapter 95. In the morning, as soon as Xiao Xian walked out of the door, he saw Lang Jie running towards him, out of breath. "Xian, go to the river. Quick." Lang Ga's face was red, not sure if it was because he was too tired, or because he was too excited. "What's wrong?" Xiao Xian was confused. "Fish fence. Fish fence." Lang Jie did not say much, but pulled Xiao Xian and ran towards the river. Early in the morning, Lang Jie went to the riverside to check on the fish fences. Based on his experience in the past few years, he certainly knew that there would be a big wave by the river last night, and thought that maybe something would be trapped there. But in the past 2 days, no one came to Xiao Xian because they were not calm. Today, when he couldn't wait to check the fish fence, he found that there were many aquatic creatures in the fish fence. Not only the big-headed piranhas, but also many other creatures that he had never seen before. At that time, Lang Jie was so excited that he checked the fish fences one by one. Later, he asked some patrolling soldiers to help him kill the fish that had almost escaped from the fish fences, but the fish trapped in the fish fences hadn't been killed yet. Because of his excitement, he only paid attention to the creatures in the fish fences. Lang Jie did not remember until now, so he immediately went to find Xiao Xian. Last night, the river rose again and returned to its original state, as if the abyss 2 days ago was just an illusion. When Xiao Xian came to the river, there were many people around the fish fence. Some of them were warriors who were responsible for patrolling the river bank, and some were people who came from the Mountain Foot district to check out the situation. The children in the orphan cave were also craning their necks. People were curious, and they loved to watch the fun. At the same time, they also knew that as long as they set up such a fence at the right time, many good things could be stopped. When Xiao Xian came over, he saw a 1-meter-long clam, which had been pried open and chopped into pieces and put aside. I met that this morning, and it almost escaped. Fortunately, it didn't run very fast. Lang Jie chuckled. That thing's shell is really tight. It took me a lot of effort to pry it open. After pushing the crowd away, Lang Jie excitedly pointed at a fish fence and said to Xiao Xian, "Xian, look, there are a lot of preys here. A lot of prey that I've never seen before." As a hunter who had hunted for more than 10 years, Lang Jie was naturally just like the other warriors. He was interested in many new prey and had already started to dissect some in the morning. Xiao Xian jumped onto a stone pillar of a fish fence and glanced around. There was something in every fish fence, and most of them were big-headed piranhas, which were all lifted up by the waves. Lang Jie was not interested in those big-headed piranhas, so he only kept 2 of them as a token. After discussing with Xiao Xian, he gave the rest to the people from the Mountain Foot district and the children in the orphan cave. After all, Lang Jie was not short of food, and he didn't care about this kind of fish. Xiao Xian didn't need it either. Lang Jie held the long spear and poked the piranhas out of the fish fence one by one. Every time the spear went down, a fish would be pierced through. With a flick of the spearhead, the piranhas would be picked out and thrown aside. The onlookers only wanted to see if the fish were back. If they were back, they could continue to fish in the following days. They didn't expect that they could also get some benefits from watching the fun. When they saw Lang Jie throw the fish aside, they all rushed up to grab them. There was no water in the fish fence, and there were many dead fish inside. They all killed each other. The blood that flowed out when Xiao Xian poked the fish made the fish fight even more fiercely. Xiao Xian saw many strange fish. Some had long and narrow eyes, some had flat bodies like manta rays, and some were like pufferfish, which swelled into a big ball and pushed the other fish to the side. Xiao Xian even saw some shrimps and crabs, but they looked different from the shrimps and crabs he saw in his previous life. They were not as big as the other fish. Well, even if there were big shrimps and crabs, the fish fences couldn't trap them. Even if they were here yesterday, they would have already run away. How about this one? I think it's edible. Hey, this one is good. It looks fierce. Even if it's not edible, take it out and play with it. Look at that fish, it changed color with a poke. There were many onlookers around. Xiao Xian was watching when he heard Lang Jie shout, "I think I've seen this one before when I was hunting, but it didn't look like this." Xiao Xian looked over, and when he saw the creature Lang Jie was talking about, he was immediately amused. "Oh, there's a turtle." To be exact, it looked more like a snapping turtle. When Xiao Xian looked over, it was biting the tail of a piranha next to it, directly tearing off a large piece of meat from the tail. Xiao Xian pointed at the snapping turtle with his spear and said to Lang Jie, "Keep that for me, I'll cook it when I get back." "Okay, I'll keep it for you." Lang Jie was overjoyed by the day's harvest, and he didn't care at all about this thing that he seemed to have seen before. He didn't care whether the fish he caught in the fish fence could be eaten or how much energy they could provide. He just felt a sense of accomplishment when he was surrounded by so many people, just like when he was walking on the path of glory for the first time. See, besides setting ground bows, I also know how to set traps to catch fish. Lang Jie was instructing people to run errands, and many people from the Mountain Foot district came to Lang Jie to learn from him. Lang Jie, who was standing on the stone pillar of the fish fence, had not stopped talking since he came here. Xiao Xian looked around, and he didn't want to steal the limelight from Lang Ga. Although these prey were shared by him and Lang Jie, he just wanted to see what other creatures there were in the river besides the piranhas. Xiao Xian let Lang Jie deal with the rest of the things in the fish fence, except for the turtle and a few fish. Xiao Xian squeezed out of the crowd and walked along the river bank. In a small forest near the river bank, many branches were broken, which should have been caused by last night. When the river rose, there should be big waves, and the river bank was obviously washed away, so the things in the fish fence might have been blown away by the waves. There were no broken branches on the shore, nor were there any floating objects on the river. Xiao Xian walked to the forest, broke off a branch, and threw it into the river. The branch floated on the river, rising and falling with the waves. But after only one breath, the branch sank, and after a short while, a series of bubbles rose up, like burps after a full meal. Those wood-eating insects also came back. During the rainy season, those insects might have followed the river beasts downstream, or like the long-tailed frogs, they had other places to go. But after the full moon, the river rose, and they came back. If his speculation was correct, Xiao Xian felt that if there was a boat between the end of the rainy season and the full moon, they might be able to safely row in the river. During that time, the river seemed to be very turbulent, but it was only the big-headed piranhas that were active. This was the so-called, when the tiger is absent, the monkey is king. Without many natural enemies, it was no wonder that the piranhas were so active during that time, and could fight for a long time with just a little bit of blood. Xiao Xian could not confirm whether the truth was as he speculated. Unfortunately, this was only once a year. If he wanted to confirm it again, he could only wait until next year's rainy season. Back in the wooden house, Xiao Xian wrote down today's observations and his own speculation in a secret notebook. After writing, he carefully rolled up the animal skin roll, tied it with a leather rope, and put it in a stone box. After sealing it, he moved the stone box to the corner under the bed. There were many things recorded in the animal skin roll, and Xiao Xian could not let other people in the tribe know about it. The information inside could cause panic, and could also bring more unnecessary trouble. Now Xiao Xian's ability was limited, and he could not bear the possible consequences, so he could only hide it. I hope one day I can use it, Xiao Xian whispered. Was there only such a tribe in the world? Today, the people in the tribe, as well as their predecessors, had only come into contact with people in their own tribe. They had never seen other tribes. When they talked about other tribes, it was like people in his previous life talking about aliens. They were too distant, and only existed in legends, but they had never come into contact with them. Where were the others? Who were they? Xiao Xian could see some of them from the murals in the stone room in the cave. But how could he meet people from other tribes? Maybe he had to go further through the dangerous forest, or maybe he just had to cross the river at the foot of the mountain. Chapter 96. After everything in the tribe returned to normal, Xiao Xian's life also returned to its original routine. Every 20 to 30 days, he would go out to hunt, then return to the tribe to make stoneware, learn how to make traps from old Ku, and train Caesar and Cha Cha. In the blink of an eye, more than half a year had passed. During this time, Xiao Xian expanded his wooden house. Under old Ku's guidance, he added stone to make a wooden house, which was more solid than the original one. In terms of construction, Xiao Xian was indeed not as good as old Ku and the others, so all he could do was to follow old Ku's guidance. The newly built wooden house was twice as big as old Ku's house. There was also a workshop for making stoneware. Old Ke's equipment had already been moved in. While Xiao Xian was making stoneware, Old Ke was sleeping in the room next door. He did not mind the noise and would wake up to instruct Xiao Xian. When Xiao Xian went out to hunt, Old Ke would sit by the window and bask in the sun in his spare time besides making stoneware and helping to train Caesar and Cha-Cha. Every time Ge came over and saw Old Ke's comfortable appearance, he felt very emotional. A year ago, who would have thought that Old Ke's life would change like this? Cha-Cha grew very fast. It had been half a year since it hatched. The weak chick that could be held in one's hand was already almost as tall as Xiao Xian's shoulder when it raised its head. The previous wooden house was too small, so Caesar and Cha-Cha wanted to tear it down whenever they made a fuss. Therefore, during the expansion this time, Xiao Xian specially built 2 nests, one for the bird's nest and the other for the wolf's nest. Caesar's wolf's nest was near the gate, so Xiao Xian was completely raising it like a dog. As for Cha-Cha's nest, it was specially built on the roof of the house. With Cha-Cha, the night swallow would not come close to the house at night. Sometimes in the morning, Cha-Cha would wake up and find several night swallow corpses next to its nest. It did not eat. After pecking the night swallow to pieces, it would fly to the river to feed the fish. Then it would watch the big-headed piranhas fight over it. It was not only cruel, it also had a bad taste. Xiao Xian always thought that the baby bird needed external help to learn how to fly, such as pushing it down from a high place. But in fact, Xiao Xian did not need to worry about it at all. Cha-Cha was restless when it first opened its eyes. When it could walk, it was even more troublesome. It often jumped off the stone table. By the time Xiao Xian realized what was going on, it could already fly very well. Moreover, it flew everywhere all day long, always provoking Caesar, chasing and pecking. When it saw that Caesar was serious, it would immediately fly high, which made Caesar so angry that he could only dig the ground. Once, when Xiao Xian came back from a hunt, he was summoned by the shaman. When he brought Cha-Cha to the shaman, he met Chief Ao, who was talking to the shaman. Ao said that Cha-Cha might be a bird similar to the giant mountain eagle. From what he said, it might be a close relative. Although it was not as big as the giant mountain eagle, it was still a bird of prey. Compared to other birds, it was still bigger. When Xiao Xian heard this, his first thought was, damn, no wonder it could eat so much. When it was a baby bird, it had a big appetite and was picky about its food. Now that it had grown up and could fly, it mostly relied on Xiao Xian to raise it. Occasionally, it would find some snacks to eat, because Xiao Xian did not let it go too far. As for what the giant mountain eagle looked like, Xiao Xian had never seen it before. Most people in the tribe had never seen it before. It was said that there was an eagle mountain far away, where the giant mountain eagle lived. Xiao Xian did not know what kind of bird Cha-Cha was, so he could only speculate based on what Ao said about the giant mountain eagle. If it was really a close relative, there must be some similarities. It was said that the giant mountain eagle was cold-blooded and cruel. Even if it was related by blood, it would still fight. However, when it came to fighting for territory, it would not fight to the death. As for birds or other birds that were not related by blood, it would fight until the end. After it won, it would try its best to kill the opponent. From what Xiao Xian observed, the Cha-Cha was really close to the giant mountain eagle. Their personalities were similar. The good thing was, because it had been tamed since it was young, it was much more restrained. You found a good stone core again? Old Ke stood by the window and asked when he saw Xiao Xian come back from the training ground with 2 big stones. Yes, it feels good. I can make some spear darts. The fine stone leaves can also be made into stone needles for setting traps. After putting the 2 stones in the grinding workshop and drinking some water, Xiao Xian heard a few birds chirping in the sky outside. Walking out of the door, Xiao Xian looked at the birds circling in the sky above his head. He raised his hand and made a gesture. The birds chirped and flew away. Cha-Cha is going out to play again? Old Ko asked. Yes. Fortunately, it knows not to fly too far. It will come back when it's time. Xiao Xian said as he entered the house and sat down. It's still young. After it leaves the territory of the tribe, there will be many fierce birds in the sky. Cha-Cha is no match for them. Old Ko was a little worried. Don't worry. It's very smart. Xiao Xian said. He was not lying. Cha-Cha did have many tricks up its sleeves. It was much smarter than Caesar and rarely suffered losses. Looking at Caesar, who came back from the training ground with Xiao Xian, Old Ko was silent for a while. Then he asked, You've trained Caesar so well. Do you want to take it out in the future? Xiao Xian nodded and said, I want to take it hunting next year. Are you really going to take Caesar? Old Ko was not sure. Although Caesar had been trained better and better by Xiao Xian in the past year, and had learned how to cooperate with him, there were too many unpredictable factors in the real hunting ground. Any one of them could cause irreversible effects. It's just a plan. I heard from Uncle Mai that we might need to hunt some difficult prey next year. I suggested it to Uncle Mai, and he said he would think about it. But we have to let Caesar show off in front of them. Although Caesar could make the decisions in the hunting group, and the others would not directly refute him even if they had different opinions, Xiao Xian still wanted everyone to know about Caesar's ability. It would be a pity to not use such a helper. After hunting with the group for so many times, Xiao Xian also knew that some special prey were not easy to hunt. But with Caesar, who had a keen sense of smell, the result would be different. Now Caesar had no problem in speed, but Xiao Xian was still training its reflexes and adaptability. Caesar was about the size of a wolf in the forest, but it did not have a murderous aura. No one in the tribe was afraid of it now. Since Xiao Xian had already made his decision, Old Ko did not intend to interfere. Even if you don't train it well now, you'll have more time to train it in the winter when the hunting stops. Winter, Xiao Xian looked at a few ordinary-looking leaves on the wooden shelf, and said, I can't be idle in the winter. He wanted to learn some knowledge about herbs from the shaman, and he had mentioned it when the shaman talked to him alone. He did not know if this skill could be taught, so he only tentatively and euphemistically mentioned it once, and the shaman agreed. Many people in the advance group knew about the use of herbs, but they did not know much about it. The other people in the tribe did not seem to have mentioned similar problems. They probably thought that as long as they believed in the shaman, they could ask the shaman for help when they needed. They did not need to spend time to learn. Or, they thought that only the shaman could learn such profound skills, and no one else could do it. When Xiao Xian proposed to learn about herbs, the shaman was very happy. However, Xiao Xian did not have much time on weekdays, so the shaman asked him to go up the mountain in the winter when the hunting stopped. Therefore, Xiao Xian said that winter would be busy too. Chapter 97. With the end of the last hunting trip, the temperature gradually dropped. Xiao Xian dragged his last prey of the year down from the top of the mountain. The weather was getting colder. Winter would come in about 30 days. They put some food in the tribe's ice cave, and brought the rest down the mountain. The other hunting team was ready to go out, so they had to hurry up. When they came back, winter would officially come. Old Ko met his friends on the mountain, and Caesar stayed there to carry him down the mountain. As for Cha-Cha, Xiao Xian saw it flying in the sky when he returned to the tribe. After the sword cleansing ceremony, it was nowhere to be seen. As soon as Xiao Xian entered the house, he saw an eagle lying on the stone table. The eagle's head was hanging on the edge of the table, motionless. Xiao Xian was so scared that he thought the eagle's head was broken. Fortunately, the eagle quickly turned over and jumped down from the stone table. When it flapped its wings, several wooden chairs around it were knocked over. Even after growing up, Cha-Cha still retained his childhood habits. Whenever he had nothing to do, he would lie on the stone table and throw everything on the table to the ground. Xiao Xian whipped him several times, but he still didn't change. Looking at the eagle squeezing over, Xiao Xian cut a piece of meat and threw it over, "Go out and eat." Even though the house had been expanded, it could not bear the eagle flapping its wings in the house. After Cha-Cha left with the meat in its mouth, Xiao Xian planned to process the meat and marinate it. He looked at the stone jar in the kitchen and found it was full. The kitchen was a room specially set aside by Xiao Xian. There was a simple stone stove in it, which was more convenient than a stone pot. Xiao Xian remembered there was an empty stone jar in the corner, so he walked over to take a look. There was an old stone vat, which was brought here by old Ku. It was quite old, and the mouth of the vat was cracked. It could not hold much water, so it was put here temporarily to store something else. There was a wooden lid on top of the stone vat. It had not been touched for some time, so it was covered with a layer of dust. Xiao Xian opened the wooden lid and looked inside. He saw a creature the size of a washbasin sitting quietly inside. There were many jagged thorns on its back. The water in the stone tank only slightly covered its back. Seeing it, Xiao Xian remembered. This turtle was caught in the fish fence during the high tide of the 2 moons. Xiao Xian asked Lang Jie to keep it for him to stew. Later, when Lang Jie brought it over, Xiao Xian directly threw it into the stone vat in old Ku's house. Later on, due to hunting, building a house, moving, and a series of other things, it was put aside. Xiao Xian had almost forgotten about it, and old Ku had not eaten it either. It had been put aside until now. It was already the end of the year. Almost half a year had passed, but it had not starved to death. Probably because it was starving, it did not have much energy. Xiao Xian poked it twice with a wooden stick, but it only moved a little. Should I stew it today? Xiao Xian thought. Just as he was thinking about whether to stew it today or a few days later, old Ku came back with Caesar. Seeing old Ku come in, Xiao Xian asked, "Do you think we should eat it today or a few days later?" "Oh. It's still here," old Ku said in surprise. When Lang Jie sent the turtle over, he did not say that Xiao Xian wanted to kill it and eat it. In addition, Caesar and Cha-Cha were in front of him, so old Ku thought that Xiao Xian wanted to keep it for fun. After all, he already had 2, so it would not be strange to have one more. Therefore, after old Ku put it in the stone vat, he only added some water to it from time to time, and threw some meat scraps into it when he was free. He thought that Xiao Xian would care about it, but he didn't know that Xiao Xian had already forgotten about it. Later, after the house was expanded and moved over, old Ku asked about the turtle again. Only then did he know that Xiao Xian had no intention of keeping it. He only kept it as food, so he did not continue to feed it. There was a difference in treatment between food and pets. In the past, old Ku thought that pets were just spare food. Later, after spending a long time with Caesar and Cha-Cha, he developed some feelings for them. Every day, Caesar would carry him everywhere, so naturally, he did not want to let Caesar starve. However, food was different. In the minds of the tribesmen, since it was food, why should they waste food to feed it? He put it aside until now. Yes, this was caught when the river rose after the full moon. I asked Lang Jie to cook it for me, but I forgot about it when I got busy. Xiao Xian said. I haven't fed it for a long time, but it's still alive. Old Ku sighed. After all, they did not lack food. They did not even finish the food in the previous stone vats, so they did not pay attention to the stone vat in the corner. This kind of creature can withstand hunger, has a long life, and does not die easily. Xiao Xian said as he threw a piece of freshly cut meat into the vat. The originally listless turtle immediately bit the meat. When it bit the meat with its eagle beak, because it used too much force, it pecked the wall of the stone vat, making a dong sound. Xiao Xian looked at the inner wall of the stone vat and found that there were all kinds of scratches and bite marks. If it was not for the thickness of the stone vat, it would have been pecked through. Perhaps, most of the cracks on the stone vat were due to the turtle. Why don't we eat it today? Xiao Xian turned to ask Old Ku, but found that Old Ku was staring at the turtle in the stone vat, thinking about something. Xian. Old Ku stared at the turtle and said. What? Obviously, this turtle was very destructive. When it was brought in by Xiao Xian, it had a murderous look on its face, as if it wanted to bite everything it saw. Sorry, this is the last chapter for tonight. I will update earlier tomorrow, and will continue to update on the weekend. After the full moon period, the activity of the wild beasts in the forest would gradually decrease. At the end of the year, some of the prey would hide and prepare for hibernation. In order to ensure enough food in the winter, the hunting team would go out for hunting longer than before and after the full moon period. Therefore, even after 20 days, the hunting team might not come back immediately. After Xiao Xian went up the mountain, he would have to wait for another 3 or 4 days for the hunting team to come back. If there were other troubles, it might take longer. I can't help you with herbs. Old Ku could not remember the knowledge about herbs that he had learned in the past. He was afraid that he would embarrass Xiao Xian in front of the shaman if he taught him the wrong things. After all, he was the shaman. However, Xiao Xian was not as nervous and anxious as Old Ku. He did what he should do, such as making stoneware, taking Caesar and Cha-Cha to the training ground, and practicing the traps and lassos that he had just learned. In this season, many trees on the hills of the training ground bore fruits. Many people went to pick them, and many fruits took a short time to ripen. One day, they looked like peanut-sized green fruits, but the next day, they would be as big as apples, and their color would change. If they were not picked at this time, the fruit would rot in a day. Therefore, many people went to the training ground to pick fruits every day, but most of them were from the Mountain Foot district. After all, they had less food, and it was always good to have more food. Finally, the day came. Before Xiao Xian went up the mountain again, Old Ku reminded him again and again not to make the shaman angry. What a great honor it was to learn from the shaman. No matter what he thought, Xiao Xian nodded seriously, don't worry. Old Ku was speechless. Old Ku was relieved at first, but when he heard Xiao Xian's words, he became worried again. Looking at Xiao Xian's back, Old Ku stood there, worried. Xiao Xian did not bring Caesar up the mountain, but Cha-Cha followed them all the way to the top. When they came to the stone house where the shaman talked to people, Xiao Xian saw the 2 soldiers in charge of guarding the house staring at the sky. The 2 soldiers naturally knew the eagle hovering in the sky. After all, it was brought to the shaman when it was very young, and it was blessed by the shaman, so no one dared to throw it to kill it. Xiao Xian made a gesture to the sky, and Cha-Cha chirped and flew back down the mountain. It was not the first time that the 2 soldiers saw Xiao Xian do this, but every time they saw it, they could not help but be surprised and envious. They had never thought that a bird that was so aggressive in the forest could be so obedient. Because of this, their attitude towards Xiao Xian was much better than the people who lived at the foot of the mountain. She walked along the stone table, handling the herbs that were placed all over the table. Behind her, a turtle, which Xiao Xian was very familiar with, was slowly following her. Every step she took, the turtle followed her. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.